Kyle.
Sunny.
Ah,
Oh, where'd I
you
go?
changed. You've
That's not
changed.
me.
No, okay, where are you, buddy? Come back. Come back. Don't leave me hanging.
Ah,
Stop it. Stop it. Okay, so tell me, what's up? We're good?
we're
Life?
great. How are you
Okay.
doing?
I'm fantastic. It feels like forever, but when was the last interview we did or session, live
I don't
stream?
know. We did something with
A couple
Getter
days
maybe
ago?
a week ago, or
Month?
a little bit
Yeah, a
more.
week ago
Not a
or
month. Not a
something.
month.
That was a
But
lot of fun. That was a little unexpected. I'm sure people didn't see that coming, but today we've got another guest, right?
that's right. And yeah, and I'm just been on like full baby watch too for the last week. My
Okay.
incredible cosmic wife Brittany is 39 weeks pregnant, and we've
Yeah.
prepared our house for a home birth. And yeah, I'm
Okay, well, I'm
intending
sure we're gonna have a
to
lot of baby stuff to talk
have
about.
my
Let,
hands
let,
on
let,
the baby, delivering the baby.
let's get
So
our guest on here and let's keep talking about
yeah,
baby
let's
stuff.
do it.
So
I'm,
who do we have? We've got Mr. Brad Mills. So can I get a drum roll, please? 3, 2, 1. Voila. Okay, we've got Brad. Brad, welcome. How are you, my friend?
Hello. Doing well, thanks.
Cool. So I guess let's start off with introductions, right? Brad, you were telling us kind of a bit about, well, I mean, I've known you for a while. I was asking you, how do we introduce you? Bitcoin guy, Bitcoin educator, Bitcoin investor. But what's new? How do you introduce yourself?
It depends. I'm a freedom enjoyer, and I've chosen my path of freedom through financial sovereignty, opting out through Bitcoin. That's depends on who's asking, I guess. But yeah, educator about Bitcoin and how Bitcoin is a way to pick up the shield and protect yourself against financial oppression.
And I've interviewed Brad. So people, if they go to buildingonbitcoin.com, they can check out where I've done like your whole backstory and you being a comedian when you were a kid and all that stuff. It was awesome. So if people want to hear that, they can go there. But today we've got a slightly different twist, right? I think there's a specific topic that you wanted to surface for us, and we'll toss around a bit. So let's go. Unless Kyle, if there's anything else you want to touch on, we're good. Can we dive into the meat of this? Yeah,
hey,
let's go.
Let's
Okay,
dive in. We're here. We're stoked that you're on the show, Brad. Brad Mills.
Good.
Brad Mills on Twitter. Kyle Kemper on Twitter. Sunny Ray Show on Twitter. Be sure to give a follow to check into our digital streams of consciousness and what we feel like sharing.
Let's go, Brad.
Yeah, I wanted to get your take on this developing momentum for freedom and the way that we can have an impact. A lot of us are politically disillusioned. A lot of people are disillusioned by our trust in the media, trust in our government, trust in now our banking system because of the resolution of the Emergencies Act being declared to freeze the assets of people who supported the protest. And even if you're on the left side of things or the center, and you may believe, like, you might be a deferential Canadian that thinks like, oh, we're doing, you got to get vaccinated, you got to follow the rules, we're trying to save grandmothers and all that stuff. Like, if you believe that, if you're on that side of things, even a lot of those centrist folks that were just deferential about the way the vaccines were getting rolled out and kind of just got the vaccine and just went on with their lives, they're kind of waking up as well to see the way that Trudeau used the Emergencies Act to start freezing bank accounts. I had a lot of entrepreneur friends and stuff that reached out to me and were kind of like, yeah, that's crazy. I can't believe that that's happening in our country. I have friends on the left, liberals and NDPs and stuff, who were also on the side of like, yeah, that's a little nuts. I wasn't supportive of the trucker convoy, but I was very disappointed by the fact that they started freezing people's bank accounts. So it's kind of something that's like, whether you're on the complete left side of the political spectrum and you've kind of gone down that rabbit hole of like, I'm just going to believe what I'm told, and CBC and Trudeau are telling me that it's just fringe white supremacists that are just trying to cause shit. Like, okay, you may be there, but you are starting to, even if you're there, like, I'm kind of steel manning this from the perspective of somebody that's on the left, that's just a normal, good Canadian that is just kind of like believing what they're being told. Even you were starting to see like rising prices of gas. You're starting to see inflation happen. You're seeing housing prices rise like crazy. You recognize something is not right. And there's like this opportunity, I believe, that most of us that believe in sound money and that have understood the problems with central banks printing too much money and inflating the money supply and devaluing the purchasing power of your savings over time, and weaponizing the central bank to create the wealth gap and to amplify the wealth gap and make the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, blaming it on capitalism. Even those people are starting to see something's up. Like, the Freedom Convoy was all about people that were sick of tyrannical fascist policies from the government forcing you to get a vaccine or you're going to lose your job, or forcing you to use a vaccine passport when 90 or 80, 85 to 90% of Canadians got vaccinated voluntarily without forcing you. People are just starting to kind of ask questions. So I'm like, as a Bitcoiner for the last 10 years, my voting was voting with my fiat. I stopped voting liberal and I started voting Bitcoin. I started understanding, like, I used to be going down rabbit holes when I first found out about money and how money is controlled by powerful politicians and corporate elites and all that stuff, that it actually caused me to believe like I was in like a Ponzi scheme, like the entire my life was a lie in terms of money. Like, I was told to save money, pay off my debts, when actually saving money in a depreciating asset that's going to steal all my purchasing power through inflation is a way to keep me poor. Even if I'm a successful entrepreneur, I'm just going to continue to lose purchasing power while the rich people are owning all the assets, getting a benefit from the rising prices of assets like land and other scarce resources and stocks and stuff like that get bailed out by the government. So a lot of us got disillusioned by politics a long time ago, whether you got into the Ron Paul campaign or even the Obama campaign or the Bernie Sanders campaign, whatever spectrum you're on. You see how your counter like culture political representative gets like rolled over by mainstream, right? And typically you opt out. But I believe that right now, and this is what I wanted to talk with you guys about, I believe right now we have kind of no other choice but to get politically active if you want to prevent Canada from turning into like Venezuela, where we have either hyperinflation caused by abuse of the money printer and people that don't understand how math works running the country and pressing all the buttons. We're going to have either that, or we're going to have a populist left uprising, because there is a lot of suffering and pain out there because of the way that the governments have bailed out corporations and banks and allowed the wealth gap to get beyond obscene. And it's going to keep getting that way because they can't raise interest rates, because it's going to cause the middle class to like go out of, go and lose their houses and stuff like that. So we have this problem where unless we get back to some kind of sound money standard and start to at least wean the country off of this limitless printing that is going to end up causing us either populist left uprising or hyperinflation or depression. I think like the only chance is to kind of like leave Canada or be prepared for the shit to hit the fan. Or the other one is to try to vote somebody in power that understands sound money and helps us nudge the like the country's like the Titanic heading towards the iceberg, and our vote doesn't really matter that much. But collectively, if we get politically active here in the right way, we can act like a big tugboat that nudges the Titanic like 1 degree away from the iceberg. We're probably going to hit it. It's probably going to fill a couple of the decks, but it's not going to sink the ship. Like, we just need to get active enough to have a minimum effective dose here. Like, the bare minimum our political like representatives should do for us is respect property rights, respect sound money. Well, actually, even respect sound money is a bonus, but respect individual liberties and responsibilities and freedom of speech, and then sound money is a bonus. So I'm very like motivated right now to try to actually take this anger and like frustration I feel from the resolution of like the government using the Emergencies Act and 2 years of all this vaccine craziness, and 4 or 5 million Canadians right now still can't get on a plane or a train or travel, and they're demonized and dehumanized as if they're the problem and they're shouldn't be listened to. And all of this stuff is like is definitely there's an energy there that cultivated in the Freedom Convoy and the protest. And I feel like that momentum is kind of slowly dying off because people are distracted by Russia, Ukraine, or they're distracted by Will Smith slapping somebody, or like all this crap in the news that's distracting people. Of course, we've got things like you guys. You guys are carrying the torch for love and freedom. And there's lots of groups like Viva Free and True North and all these different independent media organizations that are actually trying to like make something good out of what happened. But I do feel like we can get a little bit more active and actually have an impact. Like this is the one point in history where I'm actually trying to opt back in just to nudge the Titanic away from the iceberg. And I think we can all do it and we can all have an effect. And, you know, like that's where I wanted to talk to you guys about it, to see your thoughts on, do you think it's, you know, the specific strategy that we can take to try to actually make an impact here while you protect yourself with Bitcoin and opt out, learn about sound money and protect yourself from the money printer?
Kyle, you wanna take that? I mean, I've shared with Brad earlier.
I think like many Canadians, we felt very disillusioned with what took place in Ottawa after the Freedom Convoy, after seeing Canadians coming out like literally by like a million plus over 17 days, non-violently, constructively, productively, high vibrationally, with a purpose and a message. And the political establishment just said, no, we're not even going to listen to you. Instead, we're going to smear and attack you using our our mainstream media and all of our basically hounds on leashes that they have at their disposal. The Freedom Convoy brought doctors, scientists, engineers, all sorts of incredible people to the table, but the line coming out of the government was like, we're not even willing to engage. Instead, we're going to enrage. And following that, I was just like, man, this is like, what more can like the population do in order to try and have an impact and have their voices heard? So I feel like right now with the latest action that they did with the NDP Liberal marriage, they've effectively cemented themselves paychecks through 2025 and pensions as well for many of the political individuals and politicians. And I think at the end of the day, like for the NDP, like these guys were more caring about their bank accounts and their paychecks than they are about Canadians. And that just goes to show you how broken the system is. In Randy Hillier's exit speech, he was very clear that the system has become politicians representing the parties, not representing the people. There is a huge disconnect between the will of the people and the will of the parties. The parties cater to their donors and towards their corporate interests that support them and support and help write their policies. Canadians have no effective voice in Ottawa. And, and as it stands now, we can look at, Pierre Poilievre, for example. I think he's a really legitimate dude. And I think he's got really awesome, points of view. And, I've met him before, and he came and spoke at the government blockchain forum in 2016, where he talked all about blockchain and Switzerland and the ideas of referendum and how this technology can be used for improving democracy. And I think that's great. And I think that's awesome. I think, this idea that we have 364 representatives that represent all of Canada is completely ridiculous. I think the way that our elections run is ridiculous. I think this entire system was developed in a time that was pre-electricity. And now we're in the age of the internet, where we the reasons why we have this system don't necessarily apply anymore. So I think, it's time for us to start getting civically engaged. And whether civically engaged means supporting Pierre and his run, or supporting sensible politicians, or does it look at can we start like building new systems, because like as Bucky Fuller said, like you can't fix a system by fighting it. Like to make something, to enact change, build a new model that makes the existing one obsolete. And I think that's kind of, something that I'm taking to heart. And we collectively, there's a lot of energy and there's a lot of people feeling kind of left behind by the system. So as like we've seen what Bitcoin can do with money, why can't we, Bitcoin solved the digital cash, in our digital wallets. What about voting too? And that's been something that's been promised since the very beginning. And I feel like we have the technology to do this, and we have the will of the people. It's now time to build and create and start creating energy towards it.
Well, I kind of think that that's a little bit too hopeful. Like revolutionizing voting is something I don't think we're going to see anytime soon. I agree with you, but like I think, like I said, the only real thing we should expect is to nudge us away from the iceberg 1 degree. I don't think we can change the course of the ship. And even by getting active and supporting, so like if you support if you're like a diehard NDP or liberal and you will never vote any other way, right? If you're in that identity politics thing, you're just like a lifetime liberal, say, right? And you won't, but you're a Bitcoiner or you're a freedom maximalist or whatever, you like don't like the way that the Liberal Party's going towards declaring the Emergencies Act to like freeze bank accounts of protesters and stuff. If that concerns you, then but you will never vote PC or any other party, then I would agree with you, Kyle, that you could get civically active and support other people in the Liberal Party who support like your policies that you like. But if you're not a diehard liberal NDP and you are open to changing your mind and actually want to strategically use your voting power to help change things, I think any vote aside from Pierre Poilievre is a completely wasted vote. And any People's Party or New Blue or any of these new parties that are getting up and going, that are getting groundswell and support, I feel like they are like aligned with a lot of us. For sure, they're saying the right things, but there's zero chance that they will actually get in power to change things in the country. They may have a chance of getting elected and have a voice in the House or something like that, but there's a point in time where we have a politician who understands sound money. And if you understand sound money, that's like a base layer operating system that shows me that you understand a lot of other things that go along with freedom. And it's compatible with a lot of the things that the People's Party candidates and stuff say, but it's just not palatable for most Canadians to vote that way. So it's almost like I completely like a lot of the things the People's Party candidates say, but if the goal is to actually try to like prevent Canada from going down the path of hyperinflation or like socialist fascism or whatever, then really the only chance we have is to sort of mobilize behind Pierre Poilievre, unless you are an NDP lifer or something like that. And then what you should be doing is trying to educate your policymakers and meet with your MPs and do all that stuff. But like I feel like most people are disillusioned by politics so much that even the concept of like plugging your nose and voting Pierre Poilievre or like joining the Conservative Party or whatever, first step is like he's got to win the Conservative nomination. So like that's the part why I'm saying that your vote usually is completely meaningless, because there's so many people, like your one vote is not actually going to do much. But in this race where Pierre's running to be the leader of the Conservative Party, your vote actually matters, because it takes like something like 150,000 people to to vote for Pierre in the leadership race, and then he's the leader of the PC party, and then you have a guy that's the leader of now the opposition that's espousing sound money, freedom, right, liberty, but all these values.
But I'll also like say, like, and we want to hope and believe that if he comes into power, if he becomes a leader, great. If he becomes prime minister and they become the government, just the challenge with the existing system is there is nothing to hold them accountable. Like if he runs on this, there's nothing holding him accountable. Just like there's nothing holding Justin accountable, just like this holding any of these guys accountable. And that's like, that's why I speak about this broken system.
I completely agree with you. I mean, like, that's why I think that this is, like I said, I'm phrasing this like purposefully in a way that I don't think we should put our hopes and dreams in any politician. It's almost like fair weather freedom friends. Like it's a coalition of people who are freedom minded folks who are strategically linking their energy and their effort together to get somebody in power that we don't really have our complete hopes and dreams in. We just know that this is a strategically advantageous vote that we can do at this point in time to channel all of our energy towards this guy in the leadership race because he espouses sound money and these sort of principles that he's been consistent on for the last 10 years. And then also at the same time, you keep building out like the efforts that everybody's doing. You keep building out the independent media networks. You keep like waking people up, and you opt into Bitcoin. You opt out of inflation. You opt out of financial control by power hungry politicians. Chrystia Freeland wrote the book on this in 2012. She writes a chapter on this called Cognitive State Capture, or it's called like what she described as Wall Street taking over the power to print the money is cognitive state capture. She like described how it works in 2012, labeled it cognitive state capture, and then she became the person in charge of the money printer for Canada as the finance minister.
Ridiculous.
Isn't that crazy?
It's so like, ridiculous.
Yeah, we don't have anybody to keep them accountable, but if we don't get Pierre Poilievre as the leader of the PC party and work to try to get him on our terms, almost like,
Indeed.
knowing
so
that he's going to fail us.
And there's concrete, and it's not hard to like, can any Canadian vote for Pierre Poilievre? No. You have to, I believe, be a register for the Conservative Party.
So exactly. That's the thing.
One step. That's one step that everybody, like, on no matter what side you're on, you can be registered for multiple parties too. There's no limit to how many parties you can be registered for. So register. If you love freedom, like, recognize that within the Conservative Party, Pierre is probably the best opportunity.
Kyle, can I ask you to comment on one thing? So I was talking to Brad earlier about this, right? And I was telling him that how I felt as someone with yourself that was tracking the Freedom Convoy, that the shakeup within the Conservative Party, where it changed from Eric O'Toole to Pierre, kind of, or where it opened the door for Pierre, rather, it was kind of instigated by that. Did you feel that was the case or not really?
Well, I mean, I've been wondering why Pierre didn't stand up sooner. So, like, I don't fully trust him. I don't really trust any politicians, like, at this point, who have been deep in it for a long time. But again, like,
well, he did come out in support of it.
He did come out. He did meet with people. He literally, like, was not like hell-bent on promoting masks and fake vaccines, etc. He is that's one step you can take. That's one step you can take if you're civically minded and want to be civically engaged, is register for the CPC party, pay them whatever $10 it is for a
15,
membership.
I think the inflation, man, it's gone up.
$15 for a membership, and then when the time to cast your vote goes down, you vote for Pierre, and then you've done your part in that. But as well, you can get civically engaged in many other ways. There's provincial, there's municipal, there are local boards, local organizations, local associations. Like, if you want to be part of the change, get involved in these different ways and get involved in the activities, because ultimately, I think a lot of Canadians have become a little bit disillusioned, but recognize that there's a lot of corporatists that are holding a lot of these different seats and nobody's challenging them. It's amazing. A lot of seats like go uncontested. And a lot of roles go uncontested. So if you want to get active, go get involved in the school boards. Go get involved within your community.
Yeah, but okay, so I agree. I agree with you that there though. Like that's like most people today want the minimum effective dose solution, and that is kind of like what the same as I don't expect a lot from any politician. I don't expect a lot from anybody watching this or anybody listening to us. Like, they are not, like, if they haven't already been of a mind to go and get active, like, they're not going to do that. And I think it's like I do think there's an opportunity right now to evangelize the message of, like, I just kind of created that now, the Fair Weather Freedom Friends, where it's like, we're going to link with you as long as it's strategically advantageous to freedom and to our group, like, of people that, like, the 5% of Canadians that are currently 10% of Canadians really are currently, like, banned from traveling on planes and trains and dehumanized by our mainstream media. Like, that's a lot of people. If 5 million Canadians got the message that you can register as a PC, vote Pierre Poilievre, and you could probably actually not just win the leadership, but, like, shake up the government, because 40% of Canadians didn't vote in the last election because we're politically disillusioned and you don't feel like your vote matters. And there's never been somebody that speaks the message of freedom. But now we finally have somebody who's actually not a fringe candidate in some party that just got formed. He's in a mainstream party that has, like, blue chip status in Canada. And he's saying things that, like, you would only dream a politician say in terms of property rights, freedom of speech, individual liberties, individual responsibilities, and stopping inflation, stopping the money printing and sound money. So to me, it's like, I feel like we should be linking up with all the folks that helped get the Freedom Convoy message out and help this message of protecting civil liberties with ending mandates and stuff like that. If everybody just kind of got the message that, wait a second, our vote can count right now, and if we got 40% of Canadians politically active, even 10% of those people got politically active, got this message, we could have a serious impact, with knowing the full knowledge that he's going to disappoint us in a whole bunch of ways. And then if you want to take the fight to, like, the local school boards and all that afterwards, go ahead. But for now, what we need to do is hold back, like, go back 2 years at least. Just, like, go back 2 years ago. We don't need to roll back 10 years or anything like that. Just roll back 2 years ago. The trend we're on right now is not great.
Agreed. The trend that we're on right now is not great, and I think it's the time for action and creative thinking and small steps and baby steps. And the other thing is, recognize it's 2025. So this Titanic right now it's not even diverting it by 1 degree. It is being shredded by an iceberg right now. It's just being shredded. Canada,
but they don't have that. Like, that 2025 thing is if the status quo stays like it is right now. If you actually saw a grassroots movement of the people that got behind the Freedom Convoy and every other Canadian centrist that's like, I don't like what the Liberals are doing, I don't like what the NDP are doing, I typically don't vote Conservative because I'm not for, like, religious dog whistling, and I'm a social progressive, so I don't like the Conservatives because I'm for gay marriage and marijuana and all this stuff. Well, Pierre Poilievre actually is, like, got his wife's a Venezuelan immigrant. She's a successful woman who runs a business that empowers other women. He has, like, pro-immigration policies. That's the one thing I like about him too, that he, as a centrist, he speaks to me. It's like, I would never previously vote for a Conservative because a lot of Canadians are centrists and they have social progressive issues. And this is the first guy that's kind of, like, doesn't have all that baggage. So anyways, I just feel like
there is an opportunity for them to move up the timelines, especially as more truth comes out, and especially over the last 2 years, there's been so much corruption and criminal behavior within our government. And as more 18-year-olds start mysteriously dying of heart conditions while in gym class, like, the scales have to tip on this at some point. And people are going to be looking for solutions and looking for answers. And the other thing is, with time, with this projected time, it does afford the opportunity to engage people in policy development and platform development, because that's not there quite yet. That was one of the things that I would say that the PPC lacked in the last election, was a kind of a clear, there was a lot of no, of what we don't want, but there wasn't a lot of here's what we'll do, or here's the opportunities for real change. And so there, I think there's an opportunity for some qualified discussion about what real change can look like, what some of the opportunities are. But I have a feeling like, it's the same liberal conservative. There's only ever been two parties, and they just play political games. But Pierre's on the outside, and they're like, that's why they want like the likes of kind of Jean Charest to come along and just, these fascists just disguising themselves as liberals or conservatives. We've seen them; they're everywhere right now.
Well, we do have this unique opportunity. We do have somebody that speaks the base layer of freedom. Like, he speaks that message. He understands that language. I agree with you that he's not going to solve all of our problems. And when he gets in power, he's probably going to be hamstrung. He's probably going to be like not able to completely execute on the things that we would want him to. But at least it's going to be a better solution to have somebody in there that really understands the problems than somebody that doesn't even know how to do math, and somebody that wrote the book on how to do cognitive state capture and then actually became in charge of the money printer. Like, it's better to have him in power than to have another like 4 years of printing tons of money that's just going to go towards all these policies. Like, they did $1 billion to go towards the vaccine rollout, the vaccine passport rollout for the provinces. They could have taken that money. If they were gonna print that money, right? They could have taken that money and solved the Indigenous water crisis. I feel like I got rug pulled by Trudeau. Like, I kind of thought I was electing, we were electing the king of apologies, the king of reconciliation, and we were going to at least solve like the Indigenous water crisis, and people were going to stop. There was going to be less suffering in Canada and things like that. Like, if we're going to abuse the money printer and just print money for, policies, let's solve some issues. They didn't even do that. They used the money for rolling out tyrannical vaccine mandates. And, they did some good too, but it's causing extreme wealth inequality. It's causing a massive bubble in the real estate market. Now young people are priced out of homes, and this is not going to be able to be sustainable. And I feel like no matter who gets elected, there's going to be hard times. So people need to start understanding the value of sound money and start saving in Bitcoin and like learning why Bitcoin's important. And that's the way that you can opt out. It's like, the Freedom Convoy was like a protest that was super effective, but Bitcoin is a productive protest. A lot of people, that's hilarious. Bitcoin slapping the legacy finance. A lot of people got like disillusioned even more by the way that the Freedom Convoy resolved. And I find like a lot of my friends that were supportive of the Freedom Convoy that were privately messaging me because they didn't want to say anything on Facebook for fear of getting like woke mobbed. They were like, after the Freedom Convoy resolved with the Emergencies Act and everything, they kind of went down even more fringe rabbit holes. Like, they started going further into the fringy stuff instead of coming towards like, how can I be productive? And like, it's just like, it drives you crazy when I've been down those rabbit holes before, where when I first started finding out about money and how money is created and how it's pretty much a big giant Ponzi scheme, I was going down all these rabbit holes, and I was super unproductive. It wasn't helpful for my mental health. It wasn't helpful for my business, like my family. And it wasn't until I started learning about Bitcoin and started understanding, like, wait a second, this is actually a solution. I can opt out of this corrupt system, and I can vote with my fiat, and I don't have to be disillusioned by politics anymore because I'm building a parallel system here by learning about Bitcoin, supporting it, and educating people about it. And it really did kind of like turn me on to the idea that opting into this thing, into Bitcoin, is a way to like pick up the shield and have a productive protest. And then you can also support the Freedom Convoy and stuff like that. But yeah, it just, it feels like now not getting politically active it's not an option anymore. Like, if we don't get politically active and try to strategically align with somebody like Pierre Poilievre, who has a chance of getting elected, I feel like even owning Bitcoin is not going to be a big enough shield against this problem that's coming. Because Bitcoin's not a shield against the populist left uprising where they come for your shit. Like, Bitcoin's not gonna do much there. I mean, you can put the Bitcoin in your brain and leave the country, but like, it really is coming down to that decision for a lot of us. It's like, we either going to leave the country before it turns to shit, or we get somebody in power that understands what the problem is and tries to do something about it.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of top Canadian and crypto entrepreneurs and innovators have already left Canada. Like we're just like, I was like, F this. I'm not staying in Canada. I can't deal with this. This is insane. Plus, I have children in America, so it's like I can't deal with the border. Like there's the threat is too high of being, irrationally separated by some some border robots. But all that said, I mean, look, I think Pierre does make a great opportunity. I think like your voice, Brad, is really strong. Like, it would be wise for Pierre to listen to your voice to bring you on, because things are small. Like, remember that. Like, Canada is really small. Like, we're not far away. Like, Pierre is right there. Like, he's not far. And
Brad, do you want to speak to that? The nuance that you've been kind of steering them. Did you not? Were you not at that event? Did you mention that you were at?
I was. Yeah,
so you said you had some interaction with his team or something, right? How are things going?
Yeah. So have you heard of Jeff Booth, Kyle?
Yeah. Oh,
he wrote he wrote the book The Price of Tomorrow. Have you heard that book?
No, not ringing a bell. But
Jeff's like a successful Canadian entrepreneur, and he's a really good speaker. He's gotten a lot of notoriety in Bitcoin after he wrote that book, The Price of Tomorrow. It came out, I think, in 2019 or something, and then started getting a lot of good reviews and recommendations. And his book is all about like the problem with where we have in the money system right now is that central banks are targeting inflation. They have a target of high inflation, like 1-2%, whatever. Like that is a target. They're trying to make inflation happen. And technology actually causes deflation. Technological advancements cause prices to come down as things get more efficient. So you actually have the free market trying to make prices come down and the central banks trying to make prices go up. And as long as you have those two opposing forces that aren't in consensus with the free market and what the central banks want, you're going to have problems. And then when the central banks start to just bail out the banks and corporations, and they're causing the problem to get even worse, because then they cause more inflation, which technology, if they just allow the free market to ride and let technology deal with it, poor people who make like $10 an hour or something like that, they wouldn't have to worry about keeping up with rising food costs and rising gas costs and rising energy costs and stuff, because it would actually like go down. The prices would go down. And then you could still earn like a minimum wage, but your minimum wage doesn't lose its purchasing power. And in a system like that, where you have a sound money system where there's not like a interference, it makes a lot of sense to transition to that type of a system where there's no mandate to like compete with the free market. And now Jeff Booth,
I thought inflation was because of Putin.
Yeah, it's because of Putin's.
Putin's. Jeff Booth said, but you were telling me about the blockchain and kind of he's getting lost in the crypto world a bit, and maybe understanding the difference between Bitcoin and all that could be important, right?
Yeah. So Jeff Booth got the ear of Pierre Poilievre a year ago after he wrote that book, because Pierre read the book and really internalized it and liked it. Then so Pierre's been kind of texting with Jeff Booth, and Jeff's met with him a couple times, and Jeff's a Bitcoin only guy. And Greg Foss is another guy. He's a former bond trader. He's got a lot of notoriety now in Bitcoin because he used to work for Royal Bank. He used to trade bonds there, and he saw what a big scam the bond market was in Canada and how the banks were insolvent 20 years ago.
We had Greg on our show. Did we not, Kyle?
Yeah.
So, okay,
sure. Yeah. He was heated. It was right in the heart of it all.
Yeah. So Greg has had the ear of Pierre as well, from the financial side of like the bond system is ready to collapse, and Bitcoin is what Greg Foss sees as the only way out as well. So there's all these Canadian Bitcoiners that have all this respect now, and Pierre's been talking with them on and off and helping to advise on his policy around Bitcoin. But then like the Freedom Convoy happened and threw kind of a wrench in that a little bit, because Greg and Jeff were both very supportive, and they helped organize the fundraiser to help bypass the freezing of all the accounts on fundraising sites. So they kind of disconnected from Pierre because they didn't want to tie him up into that. They didn't want to like get him roped into controversy over like Bitcoiners trying to raise for the Freedom Convoy. And so they kind of like strategically made the choice to take a step back from Pierre and not try to contact him. They didn't want to get him caught up in any controversy. But, you know, so Pierre goes and starts to read like Robert Breedlove, watch Robert Breedlove's videos. If people want to look into that, it's What Is Money show on YouTube. It's an amazing Bitcoin show.
Look at the timing on that tweet.
right away, a Robert Breedlove tweet comes up.
About Polyev, yeah. And
about
him
Polyev?
saying how he watches his show while in bed with his wife.
Yeah. I would too. I would too.
Yeah.
So anyways, like Pierre's got good advisors on the Sound Money Bitcoin thesis.
I think you're onto something, man. I think, Brad, I mean, that's why I asked you to come on and talk to us about this, because I'm not political either. And I definitely don't think we should put all our eggs in one basket, or even have an inkling of hope that this would work. But to not do this almost seems kind of like a miss.
Yeah.
I think it's a wasted opportunity. We have a rare moment right now where like this dude gets Bitcoin. Like that should be enough.
Bitcoin, he gets freedom.
He gets Bitcoin. He's also accessible.
He's accessible. He's with the times. He's with the times. Like, I mean, we'll see where he goes, but
it's you know, there's an opportunity. I mean, I'd suggested to him a while ago, like, you know, about, you know, implementing blockchain and ledgers into government for accountability on spending. Is like, you know, that's a fantastic idea. Let's like, you know, show me more. So
here's the thing about the blockchain thing. Like, this is what I was talking to Sunny about. Like, you know, there's so many scams in crypto. Like 99% of crypto is all like grifting and like pump and dump boiler room stuff. Like and I actually think that, you know, this is a little fringy, like this is a little conspiracy theory in me, but I do think that like the central banks and the cartel, the banking cartel, and all these Silicon Valley surveillance capitalists that have destroyed the privacy of Web 2.0, they know, all these folks know that Bitcoin is unstoppable. They cannot censor Bitcoin. Bitcoin fought a civil war in 2017, the block size war, and we defeated, like, the node operators, the users, the small people, defeated the major corporations that were using Bitcoin, the major miners that were, you know, securing the Bitcoin network in China. The Bitcoin users, node operators, and developers defeated the early Bitcoin whales, the corporations, and the miners that were trying to swing their weight around and influence the control of the protocol. Now, that cemented Bitcoin censorship resistant, because if you can't be resistant to like a couple of whales and some corporations, how can you be resistant to a freaking government or a central bank? So Bitcoin is the only censorship resistant or most government resistant cryptocurrency there is, and they know that they can't stop it. So if you were in that position, what would you do to try to stop Bitcoin? You would actually amplify crypto, because the only thing that can stop Bitcoin is the free market competition of other things in crypto. If you distract people from sovereignty and distract people from censorship resistance by amplifying NFTs and Ethereum, DeFi, and Web3 and all these things that they control already, then you've successfully had a long-term game theoretical attack on Bitcoin by embracing and amplifying its competition. Now, I think it's a fruitless endeavor, because Bitcoin is truth. Like, it's the signal. The only thing that is like decentralized,
like poetry right now.
It's the only thing that is
hardcore with Bitcoin. But you're also kind of not this, right? Because you also am I mistaking? Like, as in you are this, but like you also get the other side of the equation.
I get the other stuff. Like I've invested in crypto companies. I speculate sometimes as an investor in some other projects and stuff like that, but I know what I'm doing. I'm just like, I know that Bitcoin is the thing. Like, Bitcoin is the greatest, one of the greatest inventions that we've ever had. It's like a once in a species invention.
Agreed.
So
100%,
like everything else is just derivative.
Amen.
I mean,
I love it.
I would say that the emergence of DAOs as well, like, represent a really great opportunity for rethinking governance structures, and like, you know, providing transparency and accountability and creating cooperation amongst organizations. without utilizing central paper registries and centralized entities. But just on like the Bitcoin note, I mean, like, let's just look at that for a second. Like, you know, one of the ways is, okay, let's like fuel a larger token market as a way to like get people out of Bitcoin and into other ones, or create other little bubbles and like, you know, proliferate this. And like, you know, from an Ethereum point of view, like it's basically no privacy. So, you know, it has major issues, but Bitcoin also has major privacy struggles as well. For the average user, pro users can be better with their Bitcoin privacy. A lot of the wallets have, you know, HD wallets, which are privacy enhancing. And but from like, you know, from that, like, just to play kind of the devil's advocate, if I am a central bank or I'm a central bank owner and I see Bitcoin, like, I say, how else can I attack this? I am going to own this, and I'm going to use my quiet money pools over time to acquire vast sums of this, move the markets, work with my media hype teams to wreck people, wreck retail investors on the bubble cycles, buy it on the downtrends, and own more and more and more of this. And it's not on the central bank ledgers. We're pretty clear about that. I think as soon as the central banks start putting in their reserves, we're going to see, you know, another wave of hyper Bitcoinization.
Isn't that El Salvador to some extent, or no?
Well, El Salvador is like, you know, is kind of is the outlier, but you know, and I thought maybe like, you know, that would do it. But I think if they act in concert to start acquiring it, then that's one thing. But I am wary that there is large amounts of it, and then we're seeing like a regulatory push to basically outlaw or like, you know, put pressure on like folks just keeping their coins in centralized exchanges. And then it's, you know, now we're dealing with custodians, and we've just replaced, you know, ultimately the money is still, it's Bitcoin, but it's being held by others.
So three things there, 3 points that I would address. Like, the first one is the you know, like the amplification stuff. Well, like if you look at the Ethereum Foundation, the WEF actually sits on the board of the Ethereum Foundation. There's like 3 seats on it, and one of them is the WEF representative. Consensus is the main company. Like, Sonny, you know what Consensus is, right? It's like JP Morgan, UBS Bank, and MasterCard are like the owners of Consensus now. They've kind of like gone all in on Consensus with Joe Lubin and those folks. And Circle is like the main stablecoin provider on Ethereum with USDC, and they're completely compliant and bending over and complying with all the restrictions.
Goldman Sachs, Jeremy Allaire,
all the banks.
Totally.
So like, you know, the metaverse stuff is Coinbase, all on like all this metaverse stuff on Ethereum, buying digital land and selling that as if it's like a valuable investment, buying JPEGs. That literally comes from the like, that's the you will own nothing, have no privacy, and be happy. That's like the slogan for Ethereum and the metaverse and Web3. You own nothing, you own JPEGs, you own nothing real, there's nothing there. You have no privacy because everything is completely open. You brag about your profile picture, your JPEG, and it exposes all of your financial activity. And you're going to be happy about it, I guess, because all the celebrities are buying the monkeys, and that makes you happy to feel like you're on the in crowd. That's the opposite of what Bitcoiners want. Bitcoiners want you to have privacy and sovereignty and own a piece of, like, the only real estate that matters is the territory on the Bitcoin blockchain, as Trace Mayer used to say. So this is a battle for territory on the Bitcoin blockchain, and all the other people want your Bitcoin too, like all the other folks that are selling you JPEGs and digital land and all banks that. And everyone, So I would say that like the central banks wanting to own the supply is going to be a problem for anything that's valuable. The central banks are going to try to buy it up. But even though they can own the supply of Bitcoin and they buy more and more of the supply of Bitcoin, yes, maybe they can do a little bit of like financial manipulation if they decide to dump it all or pump it or something like that. But that's inescapable in any free market. What's really important there is that they cannot change it no matter how much of the percentage of the supply they own. Where actually Ethereum is moving to proof of stake, which is the same oligarchical bullshit control that the 1%, the 0.1% elites right now have control over the financial system. It is a proof of stake system. So proof of work is being attacked by crypto people that are trying to say proof of stake is better for the environment. Yeah, well, actually, that's
Bullshit.
like a complete bullshit thing because it takes away the decentralization and it actually rewards more. It makes it so that the people that have the resources get more of the resources with no work. That's what proof of stake is. And proof of work actually makes you expend resources and effort and energy. And I co-produced a documentary called This Machine Greens. You can find it on YouTube. It explains the whole case that a lot of progressive Bitcoiners like Alex Gladstein and Scott Wolf from Toronto and all these progressive like people that are on the left, like in the NDP and stuff, they actually understand that Bitcoin proof of work can help us accelerate to renewable energy and help like sequester like carbon and all this stuff to help us. It can actually help the planet. It's the only free market incentive for you to get to renewable energy. Everything else is funded by just printing money and doing like racist tax credit systems that hurts Africa and like rewards Tesla and all these companies that are just like selling carbon credits more than they are cars. Bitcoin proof of work actually is a message that can be delivered to progressives to show them how it helps with financial inclusion and it helps accelerate the world to clean energy. So all these attacks
and it can also be
from
used as an anchor too for other chains as well, for provenance and security of other ones. Say, for example, if you want to create a Canadian ledger, like, you know, of government spending,
Right.
Side chains.
and you hashed it into the Bitcoin blockchain, like, you know, you can build on Bitcoin from that perspective too.
And so that perspective, I can get myself there for sure, because I like what you said about DAOs. There's some interesting stuff that is being built over in crypto world, like DAOs, decentralized exchange, decentralized lending. Like there actually is some interesting things. The concept, the general concept of NFT as like digital collectibles, digital game assets. There's nothing wrong with all these things. The issue is that it's all been pumped up and financialized and turned into this pump and dump boiler room, like nihilistic Wall Street bets thing where people are just trying to get rich because the money's dying and they can't afford a house. So they're just like gambling, and it's like distracting people from learning about long-term thinking, sovereignty through Bitcoin, sound money, and things that matter.
True. So
So
true.
we're not against technology.
100% agree.
Bitcoiners are not against technology. We're against the like the
noise,
casino, like turning it on.
Yeah, the casino. Oh, I hate that feeling.
And
Yeah,
you can go to the
don't
casino
like
if you want. You like that's
no, I know, but that's not what it.
BitcoinVideoCasino.com. Great site. Great site since the beginning. Lost many Bitcoin there. Wish I hadn't used it.
To loop it back to what you said, Sonny, like Pierre started to come out with this message about like make Canada the blockchain capital of the world. And like at the Tahini's event, he started saying like he gave this amazing speech that all of us were super pumped about Bitcoin and sound money and the problems with inflation. And then he's like, plus you can do Web3 and NFTs, and this technology is great we want to open it up. So then we're all like, no, you're so close, Pierre, because once you.
But I have a question. But from the perspective of freedom, isn't that a good thing? Because like, you know, like, yes, I mean, I don't like NFTs for me, but the fact that Kyle loves it, go for it. Like the fact that others love it, I don't really hate it. Like I've had so many of my friends, Brad, that didn't give a shit about Bitcoin or Ethereum or crypto. And now some of them will literally call me almost in tears. Like, I found this like group on Telegram. They make me feel like family. I'm like,
I lost all my money.
All the power to you.
But it's good energy.
But sometimes they'll be like, oh, I got a free NFT and it's worth thousands of dollars, or I got an airdrop.
You will own nothing, and you will be happy
Dude,
about
it. My point is freedom.
You just literally described you will own nothing and be happy. Your friends are so happy
Bitcoin
that they got a free.
Nothing then, too, right? Because
you can get yourself there. You can get yourself there.
Yeah,
you could totally get yourself there. But going back to the freedom message, like. There's a nuanced difference between I am espousing the values of sound money and I love Bitcoin because it allows like even with the Lightning Network, like he bought a tahini or he bought a shawarma at Tahini's with Lightning Network. It was like a 1 sat fee. This is the peer-to-peer cash that we all wanted back in the early days. We're finally seeing it. It's being deployed on the most decentralized, censorship-resistant base layer Bitcoin in a way that you can do your coffee purchases and still retain that decentralization where everything else is trying to scale on the base layer. and it actually causes more centralization. But with Pierre's message, he started to come out with this, like, you know, Bitcoin and crypto thing, right? And for all of us Bitcoiners that are like, we can't actually defend you from the CBC guy that's going to start saying, what about the $500 million hack from the Axie Infinity scam coin that like all these people got rug pulled on, and oh, he's endorsing crypto, that must mean he's for this like NFT project that stole $3 million from people. And like literally all of us Bitcoiners are like, yeah, that stuff is a scam, so we don't endorse that. So it's like we tried to intercept Pierre's, and it successfully. He was receptive, and his policy guy was receptive. We got in contact with them and spent like an hour and a half or so explaining the nuances. And really, it is that Bitcoiners aren't trying to ban all this stuff. It's just like strategically, you should be pro Bitcoin and pro sound money, and then everything else is like, do what you want. Like if it's a security, it follows securities regulations. If it's a commodity, it follows commodities regulations. And it's not that there's a huge difference between endorsing freedom of choice to go get scammed on an NFT or endorsing NFTs. And he can endorse the freedom of choice to go use a blockchain DAO or to use an NFT or to do whatever without like with this freedom message. Like he can be pro freedom to do whatever you want without endorsing it. Because once you start endorsing it, then you're opening yourself up. Like it's like having a front of like 1,000 borders to try to
I
attack,
do think the
you know?
Bitcoin message is tight, and yes, like if you're in government and you're running, you should be talking about Bitcoin first and foremost. And once you have a good grasp of that, dabble in other things. But it does worry me a bit when they start. Hey Brad, I like to be mindful of people's time. So you did say you only had about as much as time as we've spent already. So how are you doing? Are we still good for a bit longer, or do you need to sign off? And Kyle, you as well. I think you've got a commitment.
Yeah, I'll just postpone that for a little bit because this is.
Yeah, we're good. And then Brad, how about your side?
I'm good. Yeah, man. I love.
You get to keep
love
going. Okay, let's keep riffing. Let's keep riffing then. Okay, so where do you want to take us next, Brad? I mean, we had a little bit of content.
I just want to say too quickly on
please.
like, you know, on like, yes, the hype around like, you know, the NFTs, you know, specifically like, you know, these collections and like, I was just at NFTLA and like, yeah, it's there was a lot of you know, just eyeballs just with money without purpose or values behind them. Like, you know, there's a lot of greed and ambition and people seeing this as just, you know, another way to make a dollar. But, you know, I do believe that NFTs are like, you know, the trillion object opportunity, and that these can be like, you know, as part of, you know, what they achieve is you know, whereas Bitcoin is fungible, these are non-fungible. These are creating unique assets or certifications or identities for, you know, a whole plethora of different things. And, you know, I am wary about the openness of all this, and I'm wary about the openness of everything underneath the surveillance society. If the surveillance society can be, if the surveillance power can be turned on, the top of the pyramid can dissolve into, you know, into a not an equitable pool, but well, maybe into a new structure, more of a flat structure. So, you know, I'm open, and I do know, like, you know, after having talked to like a bunch of, like, you know, I've been in on the Juicebox DAO, you know, which raised like $50 million for Julian Assange's legal defense fund. Ultimately, they raised all this capital to buy an NFT, and then those funds were then, you know, used for legal defense that he's going to be using for his purpose. So, you know, in the face of crowdfunding, like, you know, it's an interesting approach. In the face of governance, like, you know, these tools are allowing new ways for people to engage and communicate, and I think it's really powerful. And I don't think it's like, you know, an either or. Like, you know, I think Bitcoin, that's what I like, you know, what Andreas talked about back in the day, like Bitcoin it's dumb, and that's okay. Like, it's okay that it's simple, that it's not trying to do everything. Like, you know, because it's strong. It's like a sewer rat. It gets everything thrown at it, and it just keeps trucking forward, and it's like anti-fragile and grows stronger day by day. And, you know, some of these other projects, yeah, they're way higher risk, and they have code hacks and they have vulnerabilities that, you know, end up wrecking projects because they're fragile. And, you know, Bitcoin doesn't suffer from that. But as a whole, the industry, you know, I feel is very complementary to one another. And, you know, within the, you know, Web3 community, there's lots of really interesting projects and developments that are coming and are looking at new approaches to existing models. Just like Bitcoin, like initially, it was a very novel approach to the biggest cancer on the planet, which is central banks and the ability of the few to create wealth and give it to those closest to them to further stratify the wealth spectrum.
So
evil.
Kyle, the kind of like the problem that most of us Bitcoin guys have with that explanation, which isn't that I don't disagree that there's interesting technology being built over there, and NFTs actually were created on Bitcoin before Ethereum. Like we had Counterparty, which was the, you know, original NFT platform as a base layer. Yeah, the rare Pepe's, the Spells of Genesis, like people were doing crypto stocks on Bitcoin. And like
NFTs.
You can do NFTs were created. Yeah, it was created on Bitcoin. And it's just like the technology, actually, just the way that we scale Bitcoin through second layers and side chains and third layers and stuff like that. It's like there's a consensus in Bitcoin that we're not going to like create this like financialized gambling casino about the technology. Bitcoin is the asset that we all care about. We care about the sound money. We're like financial activists trying to help people get on the lifeboat here and save themselves from money printing from the central bankers. But we're also interested in DAOs and NFTs and digital identity and decentralized file storage and all this stuff. But it just took a little longer to build it on Bitcoin because we were trying to build out the robust decentralized government resistance of the Bitcoin base layer while building out on the second layer, like the Lightning Network. And there's now other things like Omnibolt, which will have stable coins and NFTs riding on the Lightning Network. And these NFTs and stable coins, they're not going to be like you see in Ethereum and crypto. Like you can have DAOs on Bitcoin where it is actually meant to be voting on things and creating a shared treasury to be able to invest in projects, community projects and stuff like that. It's not like, oh my God, I'm going to invest in the Julian Assange DAO to make a 10x on my NFT, like what happened with the Constitution DAO. People, like 17,000 people got together and put $10 million or something into the Constitution DAO to try to go buy the last remaining physical copy of the US Constitution. They failed to buy it at auction because some Wall Street guy came and outbid them. And then the freaking thing pumped 10x after that. Even though they failed to do what the DAO was formed to do, it was just a speculative thing in the first place. People just bought the NFT thing so that they could just make a 10x. And because the bubble was so crazy, they actually made money on a failed project. You're not going to see that type of stuff on Bitcoin. But like I said, I agree with the free market thesis. Go ahead, do what you want, build your technology. But just from the political game theory perspective of a politician endorsing that stuff, it's bad because you're going to get bogged down by the like for every one successful, useful thing that's being built in Web3, there's 100 scams and grifts that are going to actually cause people tons of suffering and pain. So like, if you endorse that, if you can't just endorse Web3 without also endorsing all the bullshit, because there's a lot of bullshit.
Sure you can. I mean, you can endorse the internet, but a lot of shit happens on the internet, right?
Yeah, like, I suppose.
You know, it's like you can say, look, we're technology, we're innovation focused. You know, I believe in decentralization, new systems, and like, you know, some of these projects, because like, you know, there's a lot of good ones, but yeah, just like the internet, there's all sorts of terrible things out there too. There's all sorts of terrible scams.
There is.
Even with the Bitcoin community, there's scams. Like, you know, and they're bad actors.
As a fraction, though, like a percentage, it's not hyperbolic. Like the percentage of bad actor grifters that are in crypto Web3 stuff and the people that own Web3, like that have pre-mined everything and that are investing in it.
Yeah,
they're the same. I would say the
best scam, or like the scammers that got booted from the Bitcoin community all moved over and saw this new area, because I know, dude, Bitcoin, like before all this, it was full of scammers too.
It used to be full of scams.
Full of scammers.
No, when someone hacks your computer, what do they ask for? Not NFTs. They're asking for Bitcoin, baby. Like, I mean, I'm just saying Bitcoin does have a dark side to it too, right? Let's face it.
Just like from the political theory, like I saw it happen actually when Pierre endorsed and he came out with that "Make Canada the blockchain crypto capital of the world" thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right away, you got all these political pundit guys going and Googling blockchain scam and finding like a plethora, because every day there's a new thing where people are getting ruined and there's all these like scams happening. So it's just like, why open yourself up to that front?
I agree. I think at this point, Bitcoin, there's like a 10-year track record. Those are the kind of things that, like with Bay Street and Wall Street think about. That's what people thinking long term. So I think it's kind of maybe smart to embrace Bitcoin and be focused on that, and then start bringing in the rest, more from an innovation standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, freedom, right?
And indeed,
freedom. Yeah, exactly. I think, I mean, like I said, I don't want to tell people not to do it because that's not my thing. But it's like,
I mean,
if
look at the Canadian securities industry, though. Like, dude, talk about pump and dumps too. Like,
it's just one pump and dump after another.
Like, man,
that's why Bitcoiners don't give a shit about stocks and all that crap, because that's a Ponzi scheme too.
True.
Exactly.
The only thing that matters is Bitcoin.
They're out there supporting them, but I mean, look, like companies, like stocks and corporations and shares behind them. Like, there's like, it's not all bad. Like there's a lot of
there are some companies.
There's a lot of legit ones, but there's definitely, like, I just want to, like I love Bitcoin and it's a like, to be orange pilled and to understand like what's actually taking place, because most people have no idea about money, and that's Kyle, why I love Doge too.
Kyle, do you mind sharing with
right
Brad?
There.
Yeah, there you go, Doge baby. Why not?
Love the Doge.
Kyle,
the Doge is great for Bitcoin too. You know why? Because it's exactly like Bitcoin in the way that it's a layer 1 solution. It's a community that's built on giving, and it works just like it. So where Bitcoin can be a little bit more serious, Doge, I mean, look at these eyes.
Bro, I love it all. I love it all. All roads lead to Bitcoin. All roads lead to Bitcoin.
I used to love Doge when I was like, before the block size wars in like 2016, 15, whatever. Like, I was into Doge back then, but after the block size wars and we saw the way that the venture capitalists like weaponized crypto and blockchain to try to like just replicate all the gains they got from Web 2.0 to try to do it in Web 3 and own it again and just completely strip mine the entire technology and financialize it and turn it into a casino. I changed my views on things like Doge. Like, sure, whatever, you can do what you want with it, but like Elon Musk shilling Doge is the only reason it's valuable right now, and he's actually causing more harm to Bitcoin by shilling Doge because he's distracting people from the Lightning Network, which is actually the people's coin. The Lightning Network is the decentralized solution to small payments. So like, I'm a bit like,
maybe he hasn't realized that yet, right? So I'm just saying, like, so each its own. Kyle, can you? Oh, I was going to ask you to share something. I forget what it is now.
But Doge is funny.
Doge is funny, and it works just like
Kyle.
Bitcoin,
right? Were you not the guy in the
like,
Canadian Parliament House? Remember, like doing the ATM gig? I don't know if Brad knows about that.
Guys, like we installed a Bitcoin ATM in the spring of the fall of 2013 at my restaurant. Got a call got a call from the senators saying, "Oh, we're doing a study on Bitcoin. We'd like to do a field trip to your restaurant to see how it works." I was like, "Well, like, I guess so. Like, or I could probably bring it to the Senate if you want." And they're like, "Oh, that'd be great. We'll give you 2 hours." 2 hours, like, to see a Bitcoin. And then we brought it there, and then we had CA Vertex, and it was BitAccess was the machine, so they were there too. And these guys have been studying Bitcoin for 7 months, and they had never seen a transaction actually happen. So it's like, it's just so ethereal until you actually like see like a transaction happen. And that's like, to everybody, it's like, that's why I like Doge, but also like why I just like giving some Bitcoin to people and like, set up Edge Wallet or set up whatever wallet you want. And like, when you actually receive one, it's like email. It's like you can study email your whole friggin' life, but until you actually send and receive an email, you don't really kind of get it.
And it did get a bit expensive just because I do that a lot too. And then at one point I noticed like I would be sending people $5 a Bitcoin and like the fees were like $20. So like it's not feasible to give people small amounts. So I can see why people gravitate, but now with Lightning coming in, obviously there's less reason.
The fees on Bitcoin aren't bad at all right now. It's like, I did a transaction.
Yeah, exactly. Right now they're
less
not.
than a quarter.
And I feel
yeah,
like
that's pretty cheap now.
I feel like so many people, Brad, like they learn about other things first and then they learn about Bitcoin, right? Like I know so many people where they just like, oh, I learned about Ethereum first, but then like 2 years in, I learned why Bitcoin was like the one. So I kind of feel like, it's all good. Like Doge is so fun and cute. No, Elon Musk is talking about it. So you should
I don't know,
probably
man.
learn about it. And once you learn about it, you're like, oh shit, this is built off of Bitcoin.
No,
Okay,
you see,
I get it.
I don't think that's the way it works. I think people learn about Doge and then they're like, oh shit, how do I 10x the next Doge? And then they go to SafeMoon and then they get wrecked on that. And then they're like,
True.
oh, I guess there's an NFT dropping on BSC tomorrow. I should
Then they get
register
wrecked
for this
again.
pump and dump channel. And then before you know it, they're disillusioned by it. And like, they just think it's all just like a scam. Sure, that's an edge
True.
case too, but like,
True.
I just think it's such a waste. Like, we have the Lightning Network. We can onboard people through the Lightning Network. We don't need to onboard people through altcoins. You can learn about Bitcoin by using Bitcoin. That's just
right.
The way
I mean, and we have all that, but you also like recognize there's like this huge industry of people and other projects out there that are out there marketing and like, doing their like bringing their own like awesome marketing tactics towards like creating awareness for that. Fortunately, there aren't those people, like, that's energy that's not going into
Bitcoin.
Evangelizing Bitcoin and bringing people into Bitcoin.
That's where Brad comes in.
Well, there is like a huge community of Bitcoiners now, for sure. Like in 2021, I think because of COVID, there was a lot of brain swelling, undiagnosed brain swelling that happened across the 2020 and 2021 that caused people to think that like cryptocurrencies and JPEGs were valuable. So because the entire population has swollen brain syndrome, they decided to start gambling on JPEGs. And I mean, there's not much that Bitcoiners can do about that. I mean, there's just everybody had swollen brains. We just have to wait for the brain swelling to go down from COVID, and then they'll stop gambling on JPEGs.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
Everyone's gonna get the blood clots now, though, and just start falling off. So,
well, I mean, look, honestly, like once we've been in a bull market, right? Like everything's been going up because they printed $10 trillion. Real estate's going up. Pokemon cards are going up. Sneakers are going up. JPEGs are going up. People are just speculating like degenerates, and like wealthy people are doing it too. They're doing it with watches and cars and fine whiskeys and like rare paintings and all that stuff. Everybody's speculating because in the book When Money Dies by Adam Ferguson, I think is the author, he describes what happened in Weimar Germany right before hyperinflation happened. And it was like at this point where Germany had lost the war and they had these war reparation commitments. So they were like not only dealing with the depression, the global depression, but also these war reparations. So they had to print money to pay their war reparations, and they were dealing with all the other problems. And when they started to print so much money, it actually it feels a lot like what's going on right now. 10% of the population was actually not making money from working. They were making money from speculating on Forex currencies and buying goods and services and flipping them. So like 10% of Germans right before hyperinflation were degenerate crypto gamblers, basically. And like you look at 2021 and what happened with the celebrities and the influencers all endorsing all this like crypto gambling stuff, it's a symptom of a dying money. Like when rich people know that you don't want to sit in the money because the money's losing its purchasing power, they go and buy houses. When regular people start to understand that, they go and buy cryptos or meme stocks on Wall Street Bets or whatever. So like all of this behavior is historically happened before, and it signals that there's too much money printing, and like the equation of money is out of whack. Like people don't get the real reason why, but they all are doing the same things that they've done through history by going and doing speculation on Forex and all these other things back then. And now it's just crypto and stocks. And like I said, sneakers and cards and all that stuff. But when the shit hits the fan, like what's happening in Nigeria, Nigeria El Salvador, Venezuela, all these countries that actually don't have monetary privilege like us here. Like we've got the monetary privilege to be able to have somewhat of a sound money that isn't hyperinflating on us or losing its value by 50%. So we have the privilege of being able to think, well, I guess I should go buy $1,000 on this meme coin and try to 10x it. But when you look at the countries that actually they need Bitcoin, because it's actually a tool that's helping them survive and protect themselves from a 50% devaluation in a month. Like you go look at the Google search trends for in Nigeria for Bitcoin versus Dogecoin versus crypto versus NFTs. Nobody gives a shit about any of that stuff in Nigeria. There's 200 million people in Nigeria, and like the thing that they want is Bitcoin. You see the Google search trends is Bitcoin because it's not monetary privilege there. It's like a utility. They need it for store of value and for payments and stuff. So I think that when the shit hits the fan and the reconciliation happens from all this money printing and the bubble starts to pop, we hit a recession, hopefully not a depression, but when we get into a recession where it's a real serious thing, people are starting to worry about like paying their bills. I don't think they're going to have the privilege to worry about gambling on JPEGs and meme coins, and Bitcoin's going to look a lot more attractive as time goes by. And you see like more shit like the trucker convoy happen where people's assets are being frozen. They're going to start understanding that Bitcoin is not just a cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is a whole thing all by itself. It's something that has utility value for anybody that wants to protect themselves against wealth destruction or confiscation by an oppressive government. And there's 2 billion people on the planet right now that live under financial oppression. We're just lucky that we don't have that. It started to go that way after the Emergencies Act, but thankfully that got intercepted. But that's just what, most of us Bitcoin guys, we're like financial activist educators, right? It's a little bit different than the crypto stuff. But like I said, it is being built on Bitcoin. Jack Dorsey quit Twitter because of centralization and censorship. And
Elon
he's
just bought it today or something, 10%
Elon
of
bought
it.
10%
What does that even
stake.
mean?
He's going to have a say, I guess. But Jack Dorsey's working full time on decentralized Bitcoin Lightning Network, decentralized identities on Bitcoin, decentralized messaging on Bitcoin. And there's a whole bunch of companies that are doing this next gen stuff that you do see that's interesting in crypto. It's being done on Bitcoin, but we're disconnecting all that token speculation stuff from it. And it's like, you don't need to have a token to have a digital ID. You don't need an NFT as a digital ID. You can just use a private public key pair, like your Bitcoin wallet can be. And then you just build a web of trust network around the private public key pairs. And there's no reason to speculate on it and make it trade 24/7 and pump and dump it. It's a tool. It's a utility thing. So it is all getting built out on Bitcoin, but wrapping it all back up, like there's nothing wrong with like Pierre Poilievre or politicians saying like endorsing the freedom of choice to go use this technology. The problem is when you start endorsing it, like you endorse NFTs as a concept, then you're going to get opened up by all these like people on the left that are like, now we can attack them because so-and-so ape friend just rug pulled. And like, Bitcoiners aren't going to come defend that. But Bitcoiners will come to the defense of Pierre Poilievre when they start saying shit like Bitcoin hurts the environment. Like then you'll have 1,000 Bitcoiners swarming Andrew Coyne or whoever it is that's like flooding Bitcoin with this stupid stuff. The Bitcoin crowd swarm immune system activates to defend Bitcoin and defend Pierre from, or whatever the politician is, from people that are flooding Bitcoin. But if you start mixing in all the other crypto stuff there, like it's disadvantageous because then you kind of make the Bitcoiners unmotivated to become your personal Twitter bodyguards. So they got that message anyways. They got that message and they changed the strategy a little bit. So now the messaging that he's been putting out is like he's espousing sound money values. He's pro Bitcoin, like he's using Bitcoin to buy shawarmas, right? And then he's like, and you can use there's other uses for this technology, and I'm for people to make their choices. The same way that he can't come out and say, I think you should use ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine for COVID, but he can say, I'm for freedom of choice. You should choose whether or not you want to get vaccinated. You should be able to choose what medications you use and what protocol you use. But, I asked him this question directly because one of the PPC guys who I was talking to have a conversation like this about, his sticking point on Pierre Poilievre, he was like, I could plug my nose and back Pierre Poilievre instead of the PPC if he came out and said publicly what his views on the COVID protocols are. Otherwise, he thinks he's stuck in the matrix, and he's just like, he can't back somebody that doesn't think properly about that. So I asked Pierre about that at Tahini's, and his answer was pretty consistent. He said, look, I'm not a doctor. I can't come out and say you should be able to do this or that. But what I have is a consistent message about you should be able to choose whether or not you get vaccinated. There should be no vaccine mandates and vaccine passports, and you should have the freedom of choosing what medical prescriptions or what medical protocols you want to follow. I can't come out and endorse that because it's political suicide. And honestly, I'm not a doctor. I don't know.
Well,
and
I mean,
really
I'm not a
respect
biologist, so.
So you don't know what a man or a woman is?
Well, exactly. And like, on that note, I'd say, like, oh, come on, a little bit, like, dude, you've just rushed an experimental gene therapy injection on the entire Canadian population, and you're gonna stand by, and like, you're just gonna stand by and not stand up or say, like, hey, do we have any long-term, you want to put this in my children? You want to put this in my kids? Like, my 18-year-old, like, family member is in the hospital with heart pain, star athlete. And because his parents, like, they bought the Kool-Aid and did that. And like, there were no people within, and Pierre was one of them. And these were the opportunities. And like, obviously my brother was like complete maniac with regards to pushing this. And it's like, it's so reckless. It's tantamount to genocide what's taking place. And, and to be honest, Pierre did not stand up he
did stand up for the freedom to choose not to be vaccinated. He did stand up for that, and that's politically the palpable thing, I think. Like, strategically,
I know, and that's at the end of the day, he's a politician. So,
but that's what I mean. Like, it goes back to where we started this conversation with. If you want to be like, have your politicians say everything you agree with, you're just never going to find it. You're going to get disappointed by your politician at some way. So you're going to kind of think strategically and think like, Maxime has the right message for you about vaccines and passports and all that stuff, but he has no chance of getting elected. Pierre at least defends the freedom to not be vaccinated and is vehemently against vaccine mandates and passports, which is enough of like a language understanding that we can be compatible for the Fair Weather Freedom Friends movement to just line up behind him and vote, hold your nose, vote for him. And then if he does get elected, at least you've got somebody that's one step closer towards your policy. And then you jump ship and you go back to People's Party because you proved your message. Like, you got the Liberals and the NDPs out. You literally, like, well, all we need is 10% of the people that didn't vote last time to get politically active, realize that this is the advantageous strategy to make, register for the PC party, vote Pierre Poilievre in the leadership race, and then who gives a shit about the Liberal NDP coalition? Because you've activated all these Canadians that were just millions of them just sitting there disillusioned. So that's the message that I'm like wondering, can we make that impact? But it seems like a lot of people that are in the freedom movement, like you guys and BJ and like, like True North, all these groups, everybody is super pissed off and they're trying to push out good information and like there is momentum. But I feel like it's not going to be effective in saving the country from hyperinflation or populist left uprising, because we're all kind of like diverting all of our energy around messages of like love and freedom and like, resisting and independence and things like that, which is great. But we also need to be like, do this shit to save Canada from turning into Venezuela. And if we all did, I think like we actually could make an impact, because it's a unique moment in time where all these centrists have a way to actually link up and temporarily change things. But how do you get that freaking message out to 150,000 people? Because that's what we need. We need 150,000 people to get this message and link up and like register and vote for him. And then, that's a real impact we could have.
Well, I mean, I think like, he's been doing a really good job and has certainly, the largest following of any of the candidates. And, Max Bernier was shafted in like 2 leadership candidacies ago, by the party. They worked it to make sure that he didn't get, because
why did they do that? Like, what was he saying that was kind of
he was too conservative.
He was too truthful.
He was too truthful. Yeah, exactly. And that was like, the Kevin O'Leary time, and that's when they had Kevin O'Leary and they had Max
Kevin O'Leary
Bernier.
was running for the leader of the CPC.
Yeah, man, that was Kevin O'Leary ran for the leader. Then Kevin O'Leary's got some interesting tales to tell about that too. He raised a ton of money for them for his leadership campaign, and then ultimately pulled out of it. And then was like, okay, I want my money back, or like all the money. And they're like, no, you get nothing back. That all goes to the party. It's like, what? It's like, yeah, if you were a career politician, you'd be able to get your money back, but because you're not a career politician, we're taking all your money. So he's got a serious bone to pick with the system right now. He's a force. He's an innovative force with regards to building new systems and looking for other ones.
Did you hear? Is this the Kevin O'Leary you're talking about?
Mr. Wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, look.
What does it say?
O'Leary backed Wonderfy closes deal to buy BitBuy. They just bought BitBuy. Kevin O'Leary bought BitBuy, which is arguably one of my favorite ones in Canada.
Are they a Bitcoin only exchange like Bull Bitcoin, or are they crypto?
No, they're the crypto, but other than that, I like them. But yeah, but my point is look, he's fighting the system. He's embracing Bitcoin.
So what I gotta do then is get in touch with Kevin O'Leary.
Yes.
Get him this message, and then get him to link behind Pierre Poilievre and help push this message out that the Fairweather Freedom Friends should be backing the coalition for preventing hyperinflation in Canada through Bitcoin adoption. What a slogan, eh?
Again, and it's like, if you want to put together the Fairweather Freedom Coalition, there needs to be like, a purpose and like a constitution behind that too, saying like, look, if you commit, like take an oath on these principles, doesn't have to be like specific tactics, but like principles, like, we can get behind this. Like this is the idea of like a pack. We can get behind this and get behind you.
Well, if you check out bitaction.net, this is like a MVP, like first version of trying to group people together on a mission of having better Bitcoin policy and like trying to make Canada like the friendliest Bitcoin country in the G20. So BitAction is just like, this is a very minimal effort of just trying to get this together. We have been, man, since we talked, like that was like 4 days ago or something, I've had probably like 20 different calls with different folks along the political spectrum and in the lobbying industry and stuff, and folks from the United States who are running like Bitcoin education groups and stuff. This message is old, but we're kind of like working on a big effort to try to do 3 things. Like, one is make a multi-partisan sort of education group that goes and educates all parties, so NDPs, liberals, conservatives, about Bitcoin, so people get a good grasp of like what Bitcoin really is. And this is kind of being advised by the folks in the United States, like Jimmy Song and CJ Wilson, Amanda Cavallari. They have the Bitcoin Today Coalition, which they've helped. They orange pilled Ted Cruz, and so now Ted Cruz is all about Bitcoin in Texas. So we're going to kind of like use their model for going out, educating policymakers and their staffers about Bitcoin issues and trying to orange pill them while doing a cross-country tour about Bitcoin to try to create 1 million new Bitcoiners. Rugen Keegan, Rugakshi Pawe, and Keegan Francis are going to be part of that effort, where we're going to sponsor like a cross-country Bitcoin tour to kind of like go and orange pill MPs and people all across Canada. And Tracy from the Unconfiscatable Conference is interested in helping organize that and make that really fun. And then at the side, like we're going to do this bidaction.net thing, which is really a strategy to try to like activate people that are like disillusioned right now, but that would be willing to just take 1% of their resources and time and just put it towards helping the country avoid crashing
I
into
mean,
the
just the
iceberg.
fact that you're leading with the fact that you want Bitcoin to be legal tender is enough for me to get behind this. I'll tell you that much. I love that idea. I know there could be maybe a bad side to that, but I do like the idea of Bitcoin being used by
Well,
governments as like the
that
backing or whatever to like our CBDC. Oh God, I don't like CBDCs at all. But anyways, you
that
know what I'm
message needs
getting
to
at.
be changed actually, Sonny, because we did have a call with Pierre. We had 30-minute call with Pierre like a few days ago, and
That's off the table.
he told us that we don't need that in Canada because
Oh,
you
you were
can pay.
saying, explain that. Yeah.
You can pay in Canada. Pierre was saying that you can pay for anything with anything as long as the two parties agree. And what we should really be trying to go after is more like favorable treatment for Bitcoin for like businesses and individuals to use like de minimis rules. So if you're going to buy
Mm.
like say up to $1,000, if you're going to buy like a nice steak dinner with Bitcoin and some wine or whatever, you're going to go to the keg or something like that and spend a couple $100. You don't have to worry about doing like capital gains bookkeeping because you're
That's so
actually using it
dumb.
as a
Yeah.
currency.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's really what we should be trying to push for, is just more friendly Bitcoin policy, so you can
And hey,
actually use it as
you can
currency.
program Lightning channels to be like smart too, right? You could do it. You could do like a split transaction.
Lightning channels, you can, yeah, the wallets will do that because it doesn't need to be the Lightning channel. It just needs to be the wallet, I believe, the wallet
So like,
software.
there's a way that you could use Lightning to be able to say take a GST or a consumption tax and split it right off to like a government wallet instantly without businesses needing to act as custodians for funds.
I'd have to think about that one. My mind's not there right now, but it does seem possible. I would have to defer that one. It does
Yeah.
seem possible though.
Well, I mean, and this is like, that's something like every Canadian right now, like every Canadian business has to act like every time they take a payment, they have a liability placed on them by having to collect sales tax. And then like, then they get to do this funny offset system. And then they have to remit it later. And so they're burdened with liability for just engaging in commerce. Whereas with, digital money, you should be able to have your address, government address, 100% plus then say 13% or 15%. It's like okay, total split instantly, and then from those splits, they can be you can, instead of I don't think we need more centralization. We need more decentralization and more clear transparency of flows. But that's something that would be a very
I
good
mean, really,
policy.
what we need, like the banks in Canada to stop freezing, like, stop freezing out the Bitcoin companies. We need to have Strike and all these cool Bitcoin companies be able to operate here. There's a whole bunch of things that Canada sucks at when it comes to Bitcoin. Like we don't have Revolut, we don't have Venmo, we don't have any cool payment apps. We're still using freaking email money transfer here.
Well, that's because we operate underneath the cartel, and
Exactly.
we have a Canadian banking cartel, and they've been like fighting against any competition, and that's like that's the name of their game. And to think that they'll kind of adopt something is like maybe they'll be friends. Like again, I don't think so. That's why.
What do you guys think, Kyle? What do you think is because if if people do kind of stay apathetic towards politics and use just say like opt out of the system, how do you see the country going? Like I know you said that you left already, but like what do you think is going to happen if Pierre or somebody like Maxime or whatever does not get in power? How do you see things going in Canada with like the money printing and like the housing bubble and all that stuff?
Well, I think like by 2025, if this current status continues, Pierre will likely become prime minister and will inherit a giant mess, and it'll be on fixing that. I don't really foresee like anything that changes that election to be sooner, just because these guys are selfish and holding on to their paychecks, and there's no requirement for them to do anything different. And plus, they control the media, and by controlling the media, they control the perceived reality within Canada, even if it's starkly different from the actual reality. Like perceived reality states that
100%.
perceived reality states that 90% of Canadians are vaccinated. Bullshit. Like bullshit. I do not believe that number. That is perceived reality. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but we have no really transparency within it. But in terms of what else continues, I think Canadians are innovators and are creators. So while in parallel, while that's all going on, let's start looking at new systems. Let's start looking at polling. Let's start looking at using decentralized systems for polling, for getting more of the voices of the people, because Nanos Research, Ipsos Reid, what are the other ones? I don't know. There's like a handful of polling companies that are paid for by the parties and are paid for by the corporations to basically come up with numbers that they then feed to their mainstream media that dictates this consensus of fake reality. And I think we need to start getting a little bit more reality. And at the same time, there's nothing stopping like innovators from creating a shadow voting system for federal voting, for Senate voting, for provincial voting, for municipal voting, to start getting a straw poll effectively on things, so that we see that mainstream view has us over here, or the political views over here, the actual kind of community views over here. And maybe if we can start seeing that they're deeply separated, perhaps they can start being drawn together through technology. So I don't know. I feel like people are going to continue to create and innovate, and groups are going to coalesce. And once we stop being so divided, like even within the Bitcoin space, amongst within Bitcoin versus the Ethereum community versus Doge community, there's a lot. Sorry, I'm just going to kill that. There's a lot of common ground that we can all break bread over in terms of purpose and views. Once we get down into the tactics of things, there's disagreement. I mean, even within the Bitcoin community, there's disagreement. So that's fine. But at a high level, the values of freedom, of self-sovereignty, of bodily autonomy, of respect and individualism, I think are things that people can rally behind. So we need to focus on unification as opposed to further division along identity, religious, skin color, or 3-letter digital currency choice. And ultimately using our cryptos too, if you're sitting on it, if I've been just holding and accumulating Bitcoin my whole life, and I'm not actually putting that wealth into action, there's a great opportunity to think about food security, about land, about creating communities, about creating regenerative ecosystems in communities. That is a much bigger thing than just what kind of crypto we're using. Putting if shit really hits the fan, Bitcoin's not going to save you. Food is, water is, land is, fences are, sun is, community is.
Yeah, for sure. You got to think about sovereignty in all aspects. You want to have, financial sovereignty is super important, but also, yeah, like you said, if there's food shortages, you got to have food sovereignty as well. But, in a country where the government is going to have control over your digital wallet based on your Twitter posts and your political views, having food sovereignty is going to be a lot more difficult because they can just steal your land too. if we get into that. I mean, I really don't think it's going that far anytime soon, but we're in the branch of the universe where it is possible that a extremely high inflation happens or a populist left uprising happens, and we see 70% wealth taxes and confiscation of assets to do wealth redistribution and all this stuff. Have you seen Ray Dalio's video, Principles for a Changing World Order, yet?
I've read Principles, but not that. No.
He just came out with this like three weeks ago. It's incredible. Everybody should watch that. Actually, like, put it on your watch next list. It's amazing. It's such a great take of like historical, what happens historically when an empire starts to lose its hegemony status. Along with that book, When Money Dies. I mean, getting a grip of like historical, how things shook out historically, and then being able to plan for it yourself. There is a chance we can right the ship, you know, like, but it is a long shot.
Can I share something now that, I don't know, just because I think it's super inspirational? I think there's hope. Have you guys seen this?
They're robbing us.
Yeah, the Nova Scotian
how private banks and government work today.
Yeah.
First, the Canadian government borrows money from the private banks. They then lend the debt's money to Canada with compounded interest. The government then continues to increase taxation of Canadians year after year in order to pay back the interest on the exponentially growing national debt. What results is inflation, less real money for Canadians to spend into our economy, and the real money being used to pad the pockets of the banks.
Anyways, my point of this was just to share that I don't think they can hide anymore, man. I think this stuff is not. I mean, it is complex, and I do worry about that because, like, you speak of this stuff like, oh well, you know, I think people are just getting so pissed off that inflation is high and, you know, gas costs more and all these things. But I kind of sometimes wonder if people are actually connecting the dots on all these things. Because, like I said, it's Putin. That's what the news says. That's what the president of the United States said. So what are you talking about? Like, how are all these weird, seemingly disconnected things like, you know, COVID and trucker freedom convoy and all inflation and all these things connected? I mean, it is hard to put that all together, I think, you know, because, like, it's so obfuscated. They don't teach you this stuff in school. Your parents don't teach you. Your mom doesn't teach you. Your friends don't know. And to talk about money even is so weird, right? Like, you don't know. Most people don't talk about that stuff, like at the dinner table when they go over to family and friends' houses, right? You'd be considered weird if you do. So I think that's why we're doing this show. It's more just self-therapy than anything else. But, you know, there are people out there who I think kind of, you know, resonate. Guys, where do you want to go from here? Brad?
Well, I just want to say one thing too, like about, like, you know, you mentioned like the popular left uprising a couple of times. Like, I just don't think that can happen. I don't think that exists. I think the popular left has, like, you know, has like, you know, they were like the kind of the anti convoy demonstrations, and
it's like all 7 of them.
I think much more a much like more realistic thing is a freedom uprising again, because like with Ottawa they showed a signal of like, okay, like their final card was like, you know, potentially bringing in outsiders to assist in Ottawa, but also like, you know, finding like, you know, the hardened people who would come from all of Ontario and Quebec to come to Ottawa to deal with that pocket. Whereas if all over the place, like, you know, on principles, people are kind of standing up and seeking change. Potentially that is something, you know, that can occur. And we've seen, you know, the tyrants and like the mayors and the provinces like trying to quell and stop any of that. And I think the rising gas prices as well, like, you know, it duly hurts convoy efforts for people, in addition to just placing greater strain on everybody.
Well, I think the people that like the rising gas costs is just kind of like a double take thing at the moment. It's not like $3 a liter. So people yet, like you're right, Sunny, they aren't yet activated to do something about it, because it's the costs are rising more than they have been. And that's starting to make people take a double take. Now, the bubble in the real estate market is causing people to talk. And people like the older generation that experienced the 80s and 90s real estate, like when they raised the interest rates and it wiped out a lot of people, and all the immigrants, like my wife's uncle, we were talking a couple of months ago, he's like never talks about money. We never talk about Bitcoin or any of that stuff because he's like an old Portuguese guy. He just works and, you know, does his thing. They fled Portugal because of problems with the money. And he's like, he's like, something's gonna happen. I don't think this is right. This feels like we're gonna collapse. Like this bubble is crazy. They all, like, people are starting to wake up with the real estate bubble. That's what's, I think, the biggest thing for people, because now you got a whole generation of people that can't afford to get real estate. And that's where the populist left uprising comes from, Kyle. It's from when the wealth gap rises so much and the rich become so rich that all the have-nots look at the middle class and the upper class and they say, this is not right. I want some of that. Like, give me my UBI, give me some of your assets, tax the rich. That's where the populist left uprising comes from. It's when the government, like the Trudeau government, keeps printing money thinking they're helping people with CERB and bailing out corporations to prevent the economic collapse of the stock market. When they keep printing money, they actually keep rising wealth inequality. And then NDP blame wealth inequality on capitalism when it's really money printing. So when the wealth gap gets too big and the barbell is just unbalanced and the wealthy people have all the assets, you can't help a populist uprising. That's what happens historically. And it's either going to be a populist left uprising or a populist right uprising. You started to see a populist right uprising or a populist centrist uprising with the Freedom Convoy, but they squished that pretty quick with freezing bank accounts and Emergencies Act. So, you know, like, you don't want a populist uprising on either side. What you want is the government to go back to sound money and like wean us off the money printer. And actually, I think the only way forward is a combination of UBI and Bitcoin. Like, we kind of have screwed an entire population here. The last 10 years of money printing has caused wealth inequality to become so bad that even the middle class, who hasn't actually contributed to these policies which are making the poor suffer, they're such a huge benefactor of the rising prices of assets that they actually, like, we've kind of destroyed this whole bottom class of people. And, you know, like, we're not a country that's like a libertarian country. We're kind of a socialist democracy, capitalist socialism, whatever you want to say. A lot of us don't mind paying our taxes, and we want to see like free healthcare. We want to see a social safety net. I do think that like a message that would be popular amongst centrists and the left would be sound money, getting us back to sound money, acknowledging there's going to be pain, there's going to be a recession, housing prices are going to come down, but the wealthy people kind of have to bear that burden because you've like pillaged the resources of the country. So too bad, you're not going to get bailed out.
Oh yeah, and they've sucked a lot of that money right out of the country too. Like, it doesn't rest in Canada thanks to our tax system. Like, you know, that's
another Ray Dalio thing, man. Like, that's another thing he predicted. He predicted, like, when the government starts to try to be too restrictive, when the populist left starts to try to say tax the rich, redistribute the wealth, the rich people just leave. And then before you know it, the government actually traps the rich people, and there becomes a class war between the have and the have-nots.
And then just wait, and then also the left won't pay taxes. They'll just stop paying taxes too, and then that's another huge, like, you know, point of civic activism is just don't pay taxes.
Yeah, just like, don't pay your tax. What's the point if you're just going to print $1 trillion? What's the point of paying the tax?
What's the point? And so that's another big policy thing that I think Pierre should definitely run on is let's get rid of income tax entirely. Like, let's crush that. Because
that is actually what UBI kind of is for the you know, like an Andrew Yang style UBI. And I know this is extremely unpopular with Austrian economists, libertarians, and folks like that. But I mean, listen, this is a crazy time. If we try to just wean off of the heroin that we've been injecting into the system, it's just going to be chaos. It's going to be a depression like we've never seen. So we kind of have to do like if Pierre gets prime minister and he gets in, he's not going to be able to just right away go off to a sound money standard. There's going to have to be like a decade long transition period. Otherwise, it's going to be chaos because of all the money print.
Absolutely. And instead of just blanket giving everybody money too, it's like put just a little bit of friction. Make somebody ask for it.
Yeah, just do a little bit. Yeah,
ask. Like at least because they were giving money. They were giving money without even asking for it. Like there were corporations getting huge checks without even asking for it. Like that is completely ridiculous.
That is wild. But if you did like an Andrew Yang style UBI, you would eliminate so many employees in the government because you wouldn't need the 13,000 CRA employees that Trudeau hired to like process CERB applications. You just have a blanket safety net for everybody, no matter what your income level is. Everybody gets X amount of dollars a month because they're bailing out they're bailing out the rich corporations and banks anyways. So just stop doing that. Redirect all the money printing safety net because everybody's hooked on it. Everybody gets a base layer, like allowance from your government or whatever, with the understanding that this is like the only way to prevent the depression. And you should also learn about sound money, Bitcoin, property rights, individual responsibilities, individual liberties. Like have a message of it's gonna be shit hit the fan, or we have to do like a transitionary period while people can learn about Bitcoin or gold or property or whatever they want. But it's like I don't see in any other way that we can get through this without a populist left or right uprising or a depression or hyperinflation. And Alupa Kalula just said that be careful, guys. Pierre is also groomed by WEF. That is also a disinformation tactic that the WEF does to prevent freedom-loving people from looking more into somebody like Pierre, who represents a threat to their agenda. Pierre is not part of the WEF, and the reason why I believe him when he says this, because he's addressed this on True North recently last week. He said, "No, I've never been part of the WEF, and I don't support their agenda." The reason why I believe him is because Sunny, Lightning Labs, and Elizabeth Stark was also hit by that too. They put Elizabeth Stark, who's like the CEO of Lightning Labs, which is one of the main companies building on the Lightning Network, completely antithetical to the WEF. There's no reason why Bitcoiners would link up with the WEF. It's like the complete opposite of what we want to see happen in the world. You will own nothing, have no privacy, and be happy about it. Like,
well, also it's individuals too, and the WEF until recently wasn't like it's a big difference if you're on the Bilderberg list than if you were on the WEF list, because WEF it's a big global gathering. You're stupid if you don't go to it, if you're invited to go to it, to be honest.
It's good to have a seat at the table.
It's good to have a seat at the table there. But
you
it doesn't
push,
necessarily.
That's how you Trojan horse freedom in, right? You get a seat at the table.
I was in Davos as part of in 2017 with the crypto HQ community. It was friggin' awesome. We had a side event that was so open, talking about decentralization, basically everybody convinced that everything's being recorded. But that's a great thing about this community is we openly talk about this and we're solution focused versus on the other side. I went to one of my brother's events. He showed up in a 20-car motorcade, showed up, did an hour of selfies, and then left. And no discussion, no interaction. And then on the inside, it's okay, I'll put you on the podium in the seat, and it's here are the questions we're going to ask you, or here's the statements you make, blah, 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 whatever. But on the outside, it was interesting to be there. And those were some pretty crazy parties. But just by being there, that doesn't mean you're part of it. Beware of the circle right. Pin. If someone's wearing the circle pin, that's kind of a factor. Being definitely on the board of trustees, like Chrystia Freeland is, that's definitely a point to kind of be a little bit concerned about. Deep affiliation, but again, WEF is it's a big conference. Lots of people go to it. Bilderberg, if you don't know what that is, that's the real no cameras, no mentions, no media reports about what takes place there. That's where look into that list and you'll see who the real hitters are.
Guys, Russia. I don't know. Are you guys tracking a little bit about what's going on there with Bitcoin and how they recently, their bank or their assets were seized? I thought that was a big development as well, right? And showing once again, just like how in the trucker convoy movement, the seizing of banks and all that, I think started to wake people up a bit. Like, what? Governments can do that? Then Russia is now literally saying that guess what? They're going to exchange. Am I misquoting?
And Restream's got us a special background too. It's sponsored. Here it is. There you go.
It's sponsored, is it?
As part of oh man, that's like Restream, Canva, like all the big corps. They've all piled onto this, new mass psychosis and the.
I love how it just
the enemy
changes,
to
right?
be purged
It's
is like this other boogeyman group, and.
Yes,
I'd be curious to know what Putin's thoughts about how does Canada sort itself out. Like, let's have different perspectives on things. This is a great clip.
Fair to say you simply flooded the system with money.
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally. So we as a central bank, we have the ability to create money digitally. And we do that by buying treasury bills or bonds or other government guaranteed securities. And that actually increases the money supply. We also print actual currency and we distribute that through the Federal Reserve banks.
All Bitcoin just needs to do is just stay alive, just exist in some shape or form, and these people will do all the advertising for it. But anyways, there is hope. You see little kids talking about it, right? They're awake, and then you see old people trying to justify yes, we print it digitally. They don't even print it. Stop saying you print it. Yeah, press a button. Anyways,
it's pretty. I mean, like, I don't want to. I just feel like there's an actual shift happening here in a positive direction in a way, because the thing with Russia, Ukraine is like Russia controls a lot of the Europe's gas and oil supply. And in order for Europe to get energy independence, there's videos of Soviet propagandists talking about their strategy of how to subvert the entire population. And Kasparov, I think was his name, he did a video in like the 80s when he defected from the Soviet Union to come and talk about the propaganda that they were trying to do back then before the Soviet Union broke up. And the strategy was, it'll take 30 years, and what we'll do is we'll subvert all of your institutions, and we'll infiltrate policy groups, and then get our agenda through by making everybody disillusioned and subverting the public. And I really do believe that there's a good chance that the global warming alarmism thing is actually the real Russian propaganda, because the propaganda that would give Russia the advantage would be to prevent Europe and the West from having advanced energy independence, like to prevent nuclear power from being widely deployed and invested in, would be one of the ways for Russia to benefit a lot. So Russia is not very impactful in terms of its economy. I think Florida has a larger economy than Russia. It's not really that important on the global stage in terms of its GDP, but it is extremely important in the power situation. Russia has a stranglehold on the rest of Europe for the gas and oil and gas and coal and stuff like that. And it's because of a Swedish 15-year-old Swedish teenager that Germany decided to stop investing in nuclear power and stay on the teat of Russia's oil and gas. And we've got this thing over here where everybody's against nuclear power, and it's the most insane thing. It's like people think we're literally going to die from global warming in the next 10 years, so much so that they've stopped embracing science when it comes to nuclear power generation. And that is a strategic advantage to Russia. So if people really do support Ukraine, like this is the thing that I'm thinking about, that lately it's kind of a positive. This whole thing about like Ukraine, Russia, and everybody's backing Ukraine without really having much context, because obviously like I feel that, you know, what Russia's doing is insane. Like there's some shit they're doing in Ukraine, which is nuts. Like I'm not on Russia's team there. I also know that there's nuance in the reasons why Russia decided to take action, because this has been going on for 20, 30 years. And there's been an 8-year war now where 15,000 people have died in eastern Ukraine. But I don't think that it was the right thing for Putin to do, to invade Ukraine and start killing civilians and all this stuff, even though that's what they've been doing already for 8 years at both sides. But even if you're there, if you're the person that completely supports Ukraine, you got the banner and everything, you need to actually get behind nuclear power and stop this brain disorder of fighting against nuclear power. So what you want to do is make Putin the enemy, which they've done masterfully, reprogram the woke operating system, which is happening because Obama and all these folks are now starting to slowly endorse oil and gas and nuclear power while also renewables. So it's like all this like trend against nuclear power and oil and gas and energy independence, it's going to shift, I think. And then that will actually help us get to renewable energy and energy independence. And like, well, you know, it'll become the new woke thing through patriotism to want to get yourself to energy independence through nuclear power. And
no, indeed. I mean, I saw Elon Musk like tweeting earlier today that like, you know, oh, Spain should just create the largest solar array to provide energy for Europe. It's like, dude, that's so stupid in my opinion. It's like, why don't you build one nuclear power plant and then like instead of building a second one, you spend all that money on growing crops and food, like, you know, treating your people instead. Because I mean, like these radical solar array projects, like, you know, there's opportunity cost of every square foot.
He's also said too that like we need to get back to nuclear power and oil and gas. Like last month he was tweeting about that, saying like, this may sound strange coming from me, but we need to get energy independence through all energy sources right now.
Indeed,
including nuclear and oil and gas.
There's a big question too around like, you know, looking at our intellectual property systems when it comes to energy innovation. Because there's a lot of, you know, there's people out there, whether, you know, that are trying to work at solving some of the major, like, you know, theoretical laws towards creating abundant energy sources. And, you know, given the nature of our intellectual property system and the interests of the existing energy cartels, like if free energy comes about, like as people have theorized that it has come about many times already, you know, it just gets shut down, bought up, locked up, like inventors, you know, commit suicide, etc.
Have you guys heard of Upstream Data?
Yeah.
They're one of my favorite companies in the Bitcoin space. I freaking love them. But anyways, look at this. There's thousands of oil wells across the U.S. too remote from pipeline to transport the excess methane to refineries, so the gas is flared. Bitcoin miners are now using that energy, reducing CO2 equivalent emissions by an incredibly. This is Bitcoin being used to make the world a greener place. This is just flared normally, this gas all around the world, and now they're using that gas to mine Bitcoin. Genius. And it's so many other things like this are happening. Yeah, I think people don't get it, man. They don't get it.
1% of the gas supply in the world is just released into the atmosphere every year because of it's a byproduct of oil wells. And like, what are they going to do with it? Well, sometimes they flare it by burning it, and sometimes they just leave it in, like just release it into the air. And methane is extremely way more toxic to the ozone layer, whatever, if you're concerned with global warming. And what these Bitcoin miners are doing is like sequestering all this carbon and converting it into more clean energy.
Can we do that with cow fart? Can we do that with cow fart?
The technology needs to go a little bit more. 7 nanometer needs to go down to.
They're coming after our beef. They're all about that synthetic beef now. I don't know if you guys are any.
Yeah.
There's so many lines of attack.
The cost of a cow to BTC is lower than it's ever been before. Too. It's approaching all-time lows.
I love that.
So consider buying a cow or some chickens or a farm bot. Getting seeds. Like,
Brad, you still have it? You got an RV, right?
I got to fill it up with some of Kyle's chickens. I've been thinking about that a little bit lately, honestly. Like, food sovereignty is an important thing to think about because this Russia-Ukraine war, I'm sure you guys are aware, but Russia and Ukraine are two of the biggest exporters of wheat, and China is like one of the biggest consumers of wheat. And there's a great video by Peter Zahan a couple of weeks ago where he was talking about how China has a crisis where there was like this kind of like a bird flu thing that went all through their cattle, and they had to cull like an insane amount of cattle. So they're going to have a food shortage this cycle. And because the farmers are like, too busy stealing Russian tanks in Ukraine now to plant wheat, the growing season is going to be severely limited in Russia and Ukraine. And China stopped exporting fertilizer under the guise of COVID. So now, like, because of the COVID hysteria over here, and because it's been politicized, and the Democrats have completely like made COVID the main reason to do everything, like lockdowns and vaccine passports and all this, they've kind of committed to this thing that COVID is the problem, right? And so China has weaponized that now, because China is now using COVID outbreaks in their biggest cities that produce a lot of stuff to say, COVID, man, can't send you any microchips. COVID, man, can't send you any fertilizer. And they can't call bullshit because they've weaponized COVID for the last 2 years to make people afraid. So China's now fighting the affront in the World War III that we're in right now, but it's a World War III economically. Yeah. One of their fronts in the World War is to stop exporting things that we need under the guise of COVID. And it's a brilliant chess move by them because everybody's in the shit right now. All countries' currencies are in the shit. And Russia's defense against this economic war was to stop buying U.S. treasuries and to start buying gold. So Russia's treasuries since they invaded Crimea in 2014 has been up and to the right with gold. They've got a massive supply of gold reserves. In China, they chose the opposite because, like I said, Russia's GDP is just meaningless. They have such a stupid GDP, it doesn't even matter in the world stage. If they stop exporting, like, who gives a shit? But they do have the stranglehold on Europe for the gas supply. Now, China is the opposite. China went all in on U.S. debt. So it's like a mutually assured destruction thing. China and U.S. are kind of in the same sinking boat when it comes to the U.S. currency, but they also started stacking tons of gold. So China's got tons of gold. Russia's got tons of gold. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Russia, Venezuela, they're all talking about using a gold-backed or euros or rubles to settle currency, to settle oil trade. So like this thing that happened with the Russian sanctions, it's like a nuclear bomb that was dropped on the economy last month. And it's like in 1998, LTCM was like this like smartest people in the room PhD hedge fund that was trading bonds, and they were making billions and billions of dollars. They were like one of the most successful companies on Wall Street, and they were actually trading Russian debt. And in 1998, when Russia defaulted on their debt, it screwed up, like their algorithms just completely did not call for that, and they were insolvent. So LTCM went insolvent, and it almost blew up the entire financial system because banks had exposure to LTCM. So the LTCM was a contagion to the rest of the financial system that started with the Russian debt default. So that Russia doesn't pay their bills, LTCM can't pay their bills, and then there's all these derivative synthetic things built on top of it, which is what caused the 2008 collapse. But so the last major crisis that was averted was the LTCM thing, and it started with a Russian debt default. Then it happened in the real estate market in 2008, and there was a crisis. Then it happened in 2020 because the 2008 thing never fully got flushed out, and they blamed it on COVID, but it was going to blow up anyways. But they printed $10 trillion to paper over all the toxic debt and stuff that was stuck in the system from the last 10 years. Now you got full circle back to Russia. They dropped the nuclear bomb on Russia, started seizing all the assets of the Russian central bank, the Russian companies, Russian oligarchs, Russian citizens, any Russian, like Russian alcohol, get it off your shelf. Like, it's pretty crazy. But that alone, in a system where we're over leveraged and banks are already having to be bailed out every couple of years by the central bank, that is nuts that they just did that, and that people don't realize how much exposure that we've got through derivatives and through other countries like Turkey and other countries that have deals with Russia that now are going to default on their debt. So it's a contagion. It's a shockwave that's been spreading around the world. Combine that with all the shortages of wheat and fertilizer that's not getting pushed out. And then how about
the pricing? Like the pricing of the pricing of the gas in rubles too was like, that was a counter tactic, and
huge.
That's what Saddam Hussein did. That's what Muammar Gaddafi was doing.
Right.
That's what triggered a lot of these, like, you might think it was about some little picture that you saw of a train with something in it, like, that was brought before Congress. That wasn't the reason. The reason was he wanted to get off the US dollar hegemony as the base layer for trade. And now Putin is saying, yo, we're getting off this. We're gonna tie the ruble to gold as well. This is major. That is like, playing a serious card.
It's a chess game, and it's
you should be careful because
well,
that's like that don't
that's what, like, this video.
They're wrecking their it's like, and like, I have a lot of Russian friends, and like, they're just being attacked because they're Russian. It's so ridiculous.
I agree.
Like, this is fascism. It's instead of the Jews, it's the Russians now. Instead of, like, or the unvaxxed, it's like, it doesn't matter. This is neo-Nazism.
It's tribalism for sure.
Kyle, can I play this just for 10 seconds?
Sure.
I bought a bunch of Bitcoin at the start to say, how do you play with this new thing? How do you buy something online? And I conquered that. And how do you buy things in other countries? And how would you even pay for like a donut in another country? How can you find an ATM that works on your Bitcoin? And I wanted to experiment and learn it all. And then Bitcoin went way up. I got scared and I sold all my Bitcoin except one Bitcoin. That's not my purpose, is to have enough to play with and experiment with, but not to make money on. And 2 times it's gone way up and made money. And just recently, I think Bitcoin is going to go to 100,000. I just, I don't know where you get that feeling. I can't put any mathematics to it. I just really feel it from all of the interest. Mm-hmm. The interest in crypto is so high. And so,
boom. Anyways, we'll pause there. Just
Wozniak, some shit.
Sorry, I got ADD, so I just like to throw in shit all the time just to keep it fresh. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Bitcoin can go to $1 million, like, in relation to towards a sinking dollar.
For sure.
If Bitcoin doesn't track at least with inflation, then
check out these guns.
Dang, Sonny.
Look at this shit, dude.
Damn, man.
See,
nice.
But Bitcoin's also just great as, like, a transaction network for moving around funds. And I think a lot of people like treat Bitcoin as just this hodl mentality, and that's like, oh, just to use my credit cards and all this. It's like, dude, this is a parallel economy. This is a parallel system. So, like, how about we actually move towards using it? Offer a little bit of a discount for paying with Bitcoin. For goods and services.
Circular economy.
Exactly. It's like, let's start actually actively using it, like, within our communities, within our society. And that
we're so early still, like, the people aren't doing it yet, and like, that's a sign
because
of
they think but it's greed too. It's also, they think that Bitcoin is something that you hold and you don't use.
I just think there's not that many people that use Bitcoin yet. Like, there's only like 1% or 2% of the population that has Bitcoin. So like, as it bootstraps,
and probably only 1% of the population who has Bitcoin uses Bitcoin. Or even, I'd say probably only like 50% of people who own Bitcoin know even how to make a Bitcoin transaction.
I agree. Early.
A lot of them are holding it on exchanges. That's why not your keys, not your coins is an important message. And that's what like Bitcoiners are super passionate about. Like, the reason Satoshi created Bitcoin was to cut out the middleman and have you to be able to transact.
It wasn't about $1 million Bitcoin.
No, it wasn't about
$1 million Bitcoin.
Peer-to-peer cash.
Peer-to-peer electronic cash.
Yeah, digital gold, peer-to-peer cash, not holding on exchanges. but we're getting there. Like, that's why one of our missions with this thing that we're creating is to try to create 1 million new Bitcoiners in Canada.
I like that, bro.
And we're gonna get there where there's gonna be a Bitcoin circular economy, and like this all does come back full circle to when I was saying you should watch that video from Ray Dalio, Principles for a Changing World Order, because in that video he talks about what happens in previous cycles of history when hegemony of a certain country, their currency, starts to decline. And this is, I think, the first time in history where we're going to see actually not one new country. It's not like China is going to become the new reserve currency. It's going to be the first time in history, I think, where there's a decentralization of hegemony, where there really won't be hegemony. I think it's going to be a mixture of multiple different currencies, Bitcoin, and maybe something else, like maybe gold again, like a gold-backed currency or something like that. But for sure, Bitcoin throws a wrench in this because Bitcoin's the only apolitical, government-resistant currency that can have a reserve status. Like, it doesn't need to be the world's reserve currency. Like, we're all using Bitcoin, like hyper-Bitcoinization. But it is the perfect collateral for a post-trust world. And we are in a post-trust world. We can see it with the convoy. We can see it with all the like distrust of mainstream news. We can see it with the distrust of politicians, and now in Canada with the banks. We're in a post-trust world, and Bitcoin's perfect collateral because you can run a node on your computer.
We're in a post-truth world too, which I just find to be like, gosh.
And Bitcoin is truth. Bitcoin is the signal. Now I'm turning into a missionary. I got to be careful.
You can't trust your eyes. Primary footage, primary evidence doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, this is a great video, though. Everybody should watch it.
Yeah, cool. Hey, I'm just going to give them a
for
little bit
similar
of
situations where I saw that they had indeed happened many times before, with the ups and the downs of the Dutch, British,
Anyways,
and U.S. empire.
We'll pull this one back, but this is a...
And every time they did, it was a sign of the changing world order.
The world order.
This study taught me valuable lessons that I'm going to pass in distilled form.
Sonny, you want to mute that?
Sorry.
So let's.
He had to go do some push-ups.
Yeah, he's working.
There we go. You got the book.
Read it twice, baby. It's a great book.
Nice.
Next time we talk, Sonny's going to be over 200 pounds.
No, I have a new goal in life. I'm just going to put on 50 pounds. Why? I don't know. Have you heard of Devin Larratt? That's the why. Dude, look up Devin Larratt. He's the
Why don't you show us a quick video of Devin Larratt?
Oh, he's so good. No, you don't know Devin Larratt? Okay,
Never heard of him.
Dude, he's an Ontarian, and he's the world's best. Are you ready for this? Arm wrestler.
Hamburger eater? Oh.
Arm wrestler. And I'm about to show you somebody you've never seen before. Here we go.
He's got one big arm. Is that his
arm wrestlers of all time? He was the 2015, 2016,
not military. He was Canadian military. He was like in the
heavyweight champion.
Okay,
limits.
He's got two big arms.
Okay,
he's got two big arms.
Big drive, and this time Bortolato stays a little tighter. But
I can't believe you don't watch arm wrestling. I watch this shit all the time. Look at him!
There's the squeeze. Now he'll apply up pressure into Wagner's hand.
It's so intense, bro. On the right side, that's his wife. She's like this lady. She's class.
The leverage, the height and length of the forearm of Devin gives him so many options, and he'll try to make just minor adjustments as the match progresses. Test different. He's going for a dad move. He's
dad move.
For the wrist.
Huh? The dad move. He's going for the wrist.
Moves down and tries to grip the wrist of Bortolato. Yep. That's a brave move. With Bortolato's strength in the joint.
So intense.
Long, grinding, brutal pull. 45 seconds of absolute.
Oh!
You can see there.
Oh my god! I know all these.
That's a chess game right there.
This is a crazy one. Look at him. Game ties on. Oh! He knows he's gonna win. That face means he's gonna win. No, this guy gave up. This was a long battle, dude. This guy is epic. Look at this, match after match, taking them all down. He's a beast. Why am I even talking about him? Oh, this is another classic battle. Jeez. Like, not even UFC.
Are you allowed to do that?
Bro, yes, that's called the King's move. People hate it, but it's all fair game. The people hate it because you can break your arm doing it.
That looks like a cheese.
Yeah, that's literally this guy's move. That's what he's known for. It's called the King's move. Yeah, it looks cheap, but watch. But this is one of the few times Devin Larratt overcame. This was at the time I think this guy was number 1. Incremental. Come on, close. It's all about bringing it close to your body. Oh, dude, I want to arm wrestle so bad. I challenge my kids and my wife. Dude, I dominate them. I go use everything. Use both arms. All 3 of you. Nothing.
Oh my God, he's not gonna break his arm off, is he?
Bro, look at this. Look. This is so intense. I could watch this shit all day, bro.
I could just see dude's arm snapping in half here.
Oh, here we go.
That,
He just tires him
angle.
out. His whole thing is stamina. You can't. Here we go. Now he frames up. Now his body's behind it. You can't. No way. The guy's 6'8" or some shit. Watch this. Legs.
Oh! Oh shit!
So good. Oh my God, there's his wife. I can watch this shit for days. Oh my God.
I'm cooking you corn tonight.
Oh my goodness. He's from Ontario, dude. He practices around here. I gotta figure it out. Anyways, yeah, but he's awesome. He's awesome. Okay, guys, this has been a long one. 2.5
That was
hours.
good. Yeah,
Brad, you gotta come on the show more,
go.
man. You are okay. Let's let people go. No, you guys any finishing words? Nothing. I think we've said enough words.
The conversation, guys. I
Likewise.
want to keep up the conversation. I do think like what you guys are doing is important. I would love to see us get a little more strategic so we can have a real impact and direct people away from like US patent 5676977 and direct them towards Pierre Polyev and Bitcoin.
Yeah, I can get behind that, dude. I definitely can get behind that. Okay, Brad, thank you for coming. And yeah, we'll connect again soon. Okay? Cheers. End stream.
All right, we're gonna end the stream. Thanks, guys.